Previously, a giant gate suddenly showed up in the middle of the highway, causing a traffic jam. Not long after, Jinwoo arrived to handle it, and without hesitation, he entered the gate alone. But then, the gate unexpectedly transformed into a red gate, leaving the officials stunned by the phenomenon. Once inside, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel like today was not his day. Realizing he was stuck in a red gate, he regretted not letting his mom know he'd be home late. Looking around, he figured it wouldn't take long to clear out the monsters in this dungeon. With confidence, he summoned his shadow soldiers, determined to clear the dungeon swiftly. The battle between the shadow soldiers and the monsters was intense. However, it ended just as quickly as it started when the shadow soldiers mercilessly slaughtered all the monsters with ease. Under the light rain, Jinwoo walked through his kneeling shadow soldiers, who were neatly lined up, forming a path for him. A thought crossed his mind. The system of this world had changed. Dungeons are worlds where survival is all that matters. Hunters are born to hunt. Monsters aren't the only enemy for a hunter. Hunters must be prepared to become prey at any time. Even if there are hundreds of enemies they face, the hunt will never end. Let's move on to the next target. With that resolve, Jinwoo stepped forward to face the dungeon boss. The scene shifts to America, where a hunter is trapped in a high-level dungeon. Fear fills his face as a mysterious figure appears before him. It's Frost Monarch, a creature whose presence alone chills the air and creates an oppressive atmosphere. Moments later, a gate opens, revealing Yogimunt, the Transfiguration Monarch. Frost Monarch glares at Yogimunt, questioning his purpose. Yogimunt explains that he brings news about the small territory in the east, the place where the Shadow Monarch resides. He also mentions that the rulers seem to be trying to free something in the southern Legia, and he needs to head there right away. Yogimunt adds that someone has been confirmed as the greatest fragment of brilliant light, and they're also in that area. Frost Monarch grinned, declaring his intent to deal with that person himself. Suddenly, Frost Monarch senses another powerful presence, coming from the fragment of brilliant light. It's Sung Il-hwan, Jinwoo's father. Il-hwan stares them down, demanding to know more about the small territory in the east, which they're referring to as Korea. Yogimunt decides it's time to leave, not wanting to waste time dealing with him. Meanwhile, Frost Monarch provokes him, daring him to chase them if he's capable. Not willing to let them get away, Il-hwan quickly launches an attack. But Frost Monarch blocks it effortlessly with his ice wall magic, creating a huge explosion that shakes the area. At the Red Gate, Jinwoo finally came face to face with the dungeon boss. The monster carried himself with arrogance, acknowledging Jinwoo's strength for wiping out his entire horde and even daring to face him alone. The dungeon boss ordered his remaining monsters to emerge, but strangely, nothing appeared. Confusion was evident on his face. Jinwoo found the monster's reaction amusing. He commanded his shadow army to reveal themselves. Moments later, the shadows emerged from the bushes, dragging the corpses of the defeated monsters behind them. The dungeon boss's face twisted with rage, but before he could react, Jinwoo ordered his army to eliminate the remaining monsters. A fierce battle erupted. The shadow army charged forward as the surviving monsters desperately tried to resist. Iron and the High Orc General cut through them with ease, slaughtering the monsters without mercy. Meanwhile, a few monsters attempted to strike Jinwoo directly, but Tank lunged forward, protecting him and tearing the attackers apart with his sharp claws. The dungeon boss began to lose control. But before he could release his fury, Beru and Igris struck with incredible speed, severing his left leg and right arm, causing him to collapse, helpless. Tusk followed up with his gravity magic, forcing the dungeon boss to the ground with crushing pressure, rendering him completely immobile. Jinwoo slowly approached the defeated monster, his gaze cold and unyielding. He warned the dungeon boss to answer his questions or suffer even greater pain. But before the monster could utter a word, he collapsed and died. Jinwoo sighed, realizing the system had interfered once again, preventing him from getting the answers he sought. Determined to uncover the truth himself, Jinwoo retrieved a key from his inventory. Having reached level 100, he was finally able to view its details. The description read, Kartinan Temple Key. This key allows the user to enter the Kartinan Temple. It can be used at the designated gate, and the gate's location will be revealed after a predetermined time. Remaining time, 417 hours. Seeing the key triggered memories of the double dungeon incident from his past. Jinwoo realized the system was leading him back to where everything began. But this time, he was certain things would be different. If this had all been orchestrated from the very start, he vowed to face whatever awaited him at the Kartinan Temple, no matter the cost. In Jinwoo's guild office, Jinho was busy playing the role of a keyboard warrior, responding to the online slander aimed at Jinwoo. After finishing his work, he leaned back, feeling relieved and satisfied for clearing Jinwoo's name. Suddenly, Jinwoo appeared behind him without a sound, startling Jinho, who hadn't noticed his arrival. Jinwoo handed him a bag full of high-grade magic crystals and asked him to sell them to help build the new guild. Jinho felt pleased, knowing this would ease their future worker salary worries. He then reminded Jinwoo that they needed more members to establish the guild and asked if he had decided on a name for it. Jinwoo realized they didn't have a name yet and suggested Solo Guild, considering the guild would focus on solo hunts. Jinho was taken aback and thought the name sounded ridiculous, though he couldn't argue, since Jinwoo always fought alone. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Jinho opened it and was shocked to see Hunter Cha, an S-rank hunter from Korea. Jinwoo asked why she had come. Hunter Cha responded that she wanted to join their guild. Jinwoo invited Hunter Cha inside and asked her to clarify her earlier statement. Calmly, she confirmed that she was interested in joining their guild. Jinwoo was surprised and asked if Hunter Choi had kicked her out of his guild. Hunter Cha clarified that she had not been expelled. With a serious expression, Jinwoo asked what her real reason for wanting to join was, since their guild wasn't capable of paying someone of her rank. Hunter Cha hesitated, searching internally for the right justification. She vividly recalled her initial encounter with Jinwoo, where his unique scent had made a lasting impression on her. Intrigued by him, she had discreetly investigated his background. Her research revealed that Jinwoo was not a malevolent person, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude for his heroic actions in rescuing her during the raid on Jeju Island. Her face flushed red, and in her mind she thought, she really hopes Jinwoo will be with her until the end, but she was too embarrassed to say it. She feared Jinwoo might think she was crazy. Jinwoo, as clueless as ever, noticed her flushed face and grew suspicious she was hiding something. He pressed her again, more seriously this time, asking why she wanted to join. Still shy, Hunter Cha replied, I just want to live comfortably. Is that not allowed? Jinwoo was surprised by her response. Meanwhile, Jinho whispered, wondering what Jinwoo had done to make her act so strangely. Jinwoo, still confused, figured the pressure of being an S-rank hunter at such a young age might be getting to her. To change the subject, Jinwoo then mentioned that their guild had a registration test, which surprised Jinho with the lie. But before he could say anything, Jinwoo cut him off and told him to go buy drinks and snacks. Hunter Cha then asked what kind of test she needed to take. Jinwoo suggested she face off against one of his strongest shadow soldiers. Taking the challenge seriously, Hunter Cha immediately asked when the test would begin. Jinwoo replied that it would happen right away in the Hunter Association's gym. For a moment, Jinwoo considered testing his shadow exchange ability to see if it could work with more than one person. As Cha moved to open the door, Jinwoo stopped her. Stepping closer, he wrapped an arm around her and said there was an easier way to get there. Jinwoo activated his shadow exchange skill, and both of them were enveloped in black shadows and vanished. Meanwhile, Jinho returned with the snacks, only to be stunned as he found both of them gone, replaced by one of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers standing in the room. Moments later, Jinwoo and Hunter Cha had already arrived at the Hunter Association's gym. Hunter Cha was shocked by the sudden move, while Jinwoo realized that this scenario had gone exactly as he expected. He thought about his shadow exchange ability, which allowed him to teleport with others using his shadow soldiers as intermediaries, like a gate that could take him anywhere, as long as there was a shadow soldier to act as a destination. Jinwoo then suggested starting the test, but Hunter Cha pointed out that she didn't have her weapon. Jinwoo assumed she meant a pickaxe, which made Hunter Cha embarrassed. She clarified it wasn't her weapon. She decided to borrow a weapon from the gym storage, using her ID card to access the Hunter Association's locker, choosing a sword and preparing for the spar. Jinwoo summoned Igris, explaining that he was the best swordsman among his soldiers. He set a simple rule: Hunter Cha had to defeat the summon to win, and giving up meant losing. Though Jinwoo considered summoning Beru, he decided against it, fearing it might be too much for Hunter Cha, who might still be traumatized from their previous fight. Hunter Cha took her stance, her sword glowing with magical energy. Seeing her aura, Jinwoo was surprised and asked her to turn around for a moment. Swiftly, Jinwoo took the Demon King longsword from his inventory and handed it to Igris. The sword was now in the Shadow Soldier's hands, ready for battle. Igris started the fight with a powerful slash, his sword crackling with lightning that shattered the gym floor. But Hunter Cha dodged it nimbly and immediately counterattacked, which Igris parried with ease, creating a powerful wave that shook the gym area. Jinwoo watched intently, impressed by her skill. In his office, Chairman Mr. Go felt a powerful surge of energy coming from the gym. Realizing that a sparring match was taking place, he contacted his staff to display the gym's camera footage in his office. On the screen, he saw Jinwoo and Hunter Cha fighting. He wondered when they had arrived and recalled Hunter Cha's strange behavior after the Jeju Island raid. Mr. Go began to suspect that Hunter Cha might have feelings for Jinwoo. He then ordered the cameras to be turned off and to ensure there were no inspections that day. Suddenly, a huge tremor shook his office, indicating the battle in the gym had reached a critical point. Back in the gym, Igris had already been defeated by Hunter Cha. Jinwoo was taken aback by how quickly Igris was beaten. Hunter Cha expressed doubt about the strength of the summoned Shadow Knights and urged Jinwoo to summon the Ant King to fight her. Jinwoo hesitated, warning that Hunter Cha could get hurt if he summoned Beru. But Hunter Cha insisted, showing her determination to face the ant once more. Jinwoo reluctantly summoned Beru. Though Beru had weakened slightly after becoming a Shadow Soldier, he was still a lethal weapon designed to hunt hunters. Beru asked Jinwoo what he should do. Jinwoo ordered him to defeat Hunter Cha without causing harm. Beru acknowledged and unleashed a wave of magical energy that shattered all the lights in the room. From a distance, Hunter Cha felt a sense of unease. She wondered how Jinwoo could command such a monster. Beru prepared to strike with his sharp claws, but Jinwoo immediately warned him not to use them, emphasizing that if Hunter Cha got hurt, Beru would be the one to pay. Beru, puzzled but obedient, held back. From a distance, Hunter Cha stared at Beru with sharp eyes, contemplating the vast difference in power between them. As she thought about it, Beru suddenly appeared behind her. Surprised, she quickly swung her sword, but Beru stopped it effortlessly with one hand. Hunter Cha continued attacking with rapid sword strikes, but Beru easily dodged every blow. Hunter Cha was astonished that Beru could avoid all her attacks without even moving from his spot. In an instant, Beru stood in front of Hunter Cha, roaring directly in her face, sending her flying backward from the force. Seeing this, Jinwoo declared that the fight was over and asked if Hunter Cha was satisfied. Despite being clearly overwhelmed, Hunter Cha refused to give up and insisted on continuing. Jinwoo was puzzled, unable to understand why Hunter Cha was pushing herself so hard, despite having no chance of winning against Beru. He realized that Beru was different from the other Shadow Soldiers. Besides being intelligent, he was a lethal weapon, and he knew Beru was holding back to avoid killing Hunter Cha. Meanwhile, Hunter Cha stared at Beru with intense eyes, triggering Beru's predator instinct. Feeling insulted, Beru lunged at her with his claws. However, Hunter Cha managed to dodge, activated her sword dance, leaping into the air to strike Beru, but Beru quickly stopped her sword and crushed it in his hand. Undeterred, Hunter Cha activated her blade of light, creating a light sword strike, which managed to pierce Beru's body. However, the attack triggered Beru's killing instincts, reminding him of the Queen Ant's command to exterminate the enemy, and this woman was his foe. Jinwoo, realizing this, immediately ordered Beru to stop. But Beru, having lost control, prepared to finish off Hunter Cha with a fatal strike. Hunter Cha closed her eyes, awaiting her end. In a flash, Jinwoo moved and stopped Beru's attack just in time. Beru quickly stepped back, bowing and begging for forgiveness from his master. Jinwoo looked at Hunter Cha and asked why she was pushing herself so hard, even risking her life for an entrance test to a nameless guild. Hunter Cha stayed quiet, not answering. He pressed her again, more seriously this time, saying, "Perhaps, you're interested in me?" Hunter Cha was shocked by the question. After a moment of hesitation, she admitted her feelings, her face turning red with embarrassment. The scene shifts to the United States Bureau of Hunters, where Michael and Mrs. Sellner stand facing David Brennan, the director of the Bureau. Michael apologizes, feeling ashamed about the earlier incident involving Sung Jinwoo. However, David firmly states that he didn't summon them for apologies. He demands an explanation of what actually happened. Michael explains that based on Mrs. Sellner's earlier observations, she identified Sung Jinwoo as one of the kings. David, his gaze sharp, asks Mrs. Sellner for a more detailed explanation. He questions whether this means Jinwoo's power rivals that of a national-level hunter. Mrs. Sellner clarifies that all awakened hunters are connected to the other side, and she can perceive this connection. Awakened individuals who gain immense power from the other side are surrounded by a brilliant light. She refers to them as kings. However, when observing Jinwoo, she saw no such light. Instead, she only saw darkness, and that darkness originated solely from him. David, taken aback by this revelation, asks if this darkness signifies that Jinwoo is evil. Mrs. Sellner cautiously explains that it's not about good or evil. The darkness is the source of his power, an extraordinary strength that doesn't come from the other side but is entirely his own and limitless. Rising from his chair, David approaches Mrs. Sellner, thanking her for the valuable information. He then instructs Michael to follow him to the 24th basement floor. Inside the elevator, David reveals his plan to Michael. If Mrs. Sellner's abilities fail, they will resort to alternative measures to secure Sung Jinwoo. David reminds Michael of the S-rank gate incident that devastated the western United States. During that time, America offered an immense reward to the 5 strongest hunters who survived the catastrophe. That event marked the emergence of a monster with national-level power, the inextinguishable flame, the dragon Kamish. This terrifying creature claimed the lives of dozens of elite hunters before it was defeated. Yet, Kamish left behind something far more valuable than destruction. Upon reaching a heavily guarded special chamber, David opens a thick door. Inside lies the rune stone from Kamish's corpse, perfectly preserved over the past 8 years. David regards it as a priceless legacy that no national-level hunter has witnessed firsthand since then. Nearby, Kamish's meticulously preserved skull rests, a majestic relic of the tragic event that shook the world. In his apartment, Jinwoo stands before a mirror, noticing changes in his appearance. He looks taller and more handsome than before, prompting a moment of reflection. He then approaches his younger sister, Ji-na, and asks for her opinion on his appearance. Ji-na, surprised, and responds with confusion, wondering where this newfound confidence comes from. A playful sibling quarrel ensues. Jinwoo ends the argument by mentioning his plan to establish a guild, naming it Solo Guild. However, Ji-na finds the name odd, pointing out that with his ability to summon numerous shadow soldiers, it's technically not solo. Though mildly annoyed, Jinwoo admits she has a point and asks for another suggestion. Ji-na proposes Ajin Guild, combining her name with a phrase meaning, "I move forward." Jinwoo agrees, finding the name more meaningful. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Hunter Cha is lost in thought, replaying the events of the gym test at the Hunters Association. Her face flushes each time she recalls the moment, and she tosses and turns on her bed, restless. She worries that Jinwoo might now see her as strange. Yet, she tries to reassure herself that her feelings are justified, given that Jinwoo once saved her life. Suddenly, she's drawn into her subconscious. There, she sees the shadow of Min Byung-yu reaching out to her. The shadow, appearing fearful, pleads with her to deliver an urgent message to Jinwoo. He must be cautious with his power. Cha abruptly awakens, certain that what she experienced was no mere illusion. The scene shifts to the Knights Guild office. Guild Master Park Jong-soo receives a report about a large A-rank gate that has appeared in their territory. However, tackling such a gate requires at least one S-rank hunter on the raid team, which frustrates him as it would mean relinquishing the raid rights to another guild. One of his members suggests seeking Sung Jinwoo's assistance. After some thought, Jong-soo deems the idea reasonable. Collaborating with Jinwoo would not only protect the Knights Guild's reputation as one of the major guilds, but also ensure a safe raid. He decides to approach Jinwoo directly at his new guild's office. At Jinwoo's guild office, he proposes Ajin Guild as the name for their newly established guild. Jinho seems to prefer this over Solo Guild, and they settle on the name. They then discuss recruiting founding members. Jinho brings up Hunter Cha's recent visit, but Jinwoo explains that she doesn't meet the criteria he's looking for. Surprised, Jinho questions what kind of individual Jinwoo wants. Jinwoo reveals that he's looking for someone trustworthy who isn't overly concerned with guild activities. Their conversation is interrupted by a thunderous knock at the door. Jinwoo opens it and finds Guild Master Park Jong-soo and two of his members standing there, their faces twisted like they just swallowed a bug. Jinwoo and Jinho exchange bewildered glances, unsure whether to welcome them or call the police. After an awkward pause, they were invited to step inside and begin the discussion. Jong-soo shows them a video of the massive gate that recently appeared in their region. Jinwoo asks if it's an S-rank gate, but Jong-soo explains that the association classified it as A-rank. However, the unstable magical energy it emits and its enormous size, the largest ever seen in Busan, raise doubts about the accuracy of the classification. Since the Knights Guild lacks an S-rank hunter, the association won't permit them to conduct the raid. Thus, Jong-soo proposes a partnership with Jinwoo, offering 20% of the raid's profits as compensation. Jinwoo firmly counters with a 50-50 split, emphasizing that the partnership must be guild to guild, as he has just founded the Ajin Guild. Jong-soo attempts to negotiate a 40-60th split, but Jinwoo stands his ground, refusing to collaborate unless his terms are met. After a quick pause, Jong-soo points out that Jinwoo's got a weird vibe, even though he's pretty young. He decides to go for it, but only if Jinwoo can beat the dungeon boss. Jinwoo's cool with it, and they seal the deal with a handshake. Jong-soo mentions that the raid begins the next day and offers Jinwoo a ride to the gate's distant location. Jinwoo declines, citing unfinished business that evening. As Jong-soo and his team depart, Jinwoo discreetly sends a shadow soldier into Jong-soo's shadow. The next day, hunters gather in front of the massive gate on Busan's coast. The Knights Guild members, clad in luxurious gear, prepare for the raid. Jong-soo keeps glancing nervously at his phone's clock. Only 5 minutes remain until the raid starts, but Jinwoo is nowhere to be seen. He regrets not escorting Jinwoo directly the day before. Meanwhile, Jinwoo stands in his apartment, gazing at the overcast sky through the window. He wonders if Jin-ah remembered to bring an umbrella to school. After a brief moment of contemplation, he decides it's time to leave. Activating his shadow exchange skill, his body is enveloped in darkness and slowly vanishes. The scene shifts to Jinna's school, where 3 students walk down a hallway toward an unused room to retrieve a statue. When they step inside, they find rows of dusty statues lined up, but in the corner of the room, a gate has appeared. One of the braver students steps up to the gate and explains that a closed gate like this isn't dangerous yet. It usually takes about a week to fully open, so the monsters inside won't come out anytime soon. Meanwhile, the 2 other students behind him wonder whether the gate just appeared or has been there for some time. Suddenly, the gate fractures, and a monstrous hand bursts out, grabbing the brave student's head and lifting him into the air. He cries for help, but in a flash, his head is crushed, leaving the other 2 students frozen in terror. And in the blink of an eye, the 2 remaining students were lying on the floor covered in blood, showing just how fierce the orcs were. Orcs are natural hunters with lower intelligence than humans, but their sharp instincts make them deadly trackers. One of the orcs scans the area and notices the building's maze-like structure. It looks like a castle filled with humans to hunt. He decides to begin the hunt and orders the others to call for reinforcements. The orcs started hunting, and they slaughtered all the humans they came across. The scene shifts to an A-rank gate in Busan, where Jinwoo has just arrived and notices that the gate looks much larger up close. He observes how well organized the Knights Guild is, with their collection team, mining team, and strike team, consisting of 13 A-rank hunters and 20 B-rank hunters. Suddenly, the hunters on site swarm around Jinwoo, showering him with praise for his success during the Jeju Island raid and eagerly asking if he'll be leading this raid himself. A young woman steps in to stop the commotion. It's Jong Yirim, the main healer of the Knights Guild strike team. Shortly after, Jong-soo arrives and clarifies that he'll be the one leading the raid, while Jinwoo's role is simply to protect them during the operation. Hearing this, a few hunters start grumbling, questioning why the guildmaster always insists on leading and wondering if they're considered so weak that they need Jinwoo's protection. One hunter, particularly cocky, boldly asks Jinwoo if he really thinks the elite Knights Guild members are so feeble that they need his help. Jong-soo quickly steps in, explaining to Jinwoo that his team can be a bit rough around the edges, but this is just how things work in the Knights Guild. Checking his phone, Jong-soo raises his voice and commands the team to begin the raid. The scene shifts to the Hunter Association office, where a female dispatcher answers an emergency call. A panicked schoolgirl is on the line, saying that a horde of monsters has appeared at her school and is hunting people. Trying to calm her down, the dispatcher reassures her that hunters are on their way to save her. She then asks the girl to describe the monsters. Stammering through her words, the girl says they look like humans but with hideous faces and green skin. The description instantly clicks. The monsters are orcs. Panicked, she tells the girl to run because orcs can smell their prey. Unfortunately, there was the sound of something falling on the phone, followed by a long scream that suddenly stopped. This left an eerie silence for the dispatcher who heard it. The school was in chaos. Students were running out, trying to escape, while those trapped inside were relentlessly hunted by the orc monsters. With a threatening voice, they discussed how half of the school had already been taken, and how they would move to the upper floor to slaughter the remaining humans. On the upper floors, a group of students barricades themselves inside a classroom, stacking desks and chairs against the door. But the orcs easily tear through, shattering the barricade. The students freeze, paralyzed with fear, as a towering orc steps into the room, blood-stained sword in hand. One student tries to escape through another door, only to be cut down by an orc waiting outside. The monsters sneer, mocking the humans' terror, ready to unleash more carnage. In the corner, Jinna and Songi found themselves trapped in the same situation. Jinna was paralyzed with fear, constantly calling out to her older brother in her mind. Songi, trying to muster some courage, reminds herself she's a hunter, even if she's only E-rank. But Jinna tried to stop her. Meanwhile, two orc monsters locked their gaze on them. One of them sensed a faint magical energy from Jinna. Without hesitation, the orc swung its axe to attack. Jinna and Songi trembled, resigned to their fate. Suddenly, a shadow-high orc appeared, blocking the orc's attack. It was a shadow warrior hidden in Jinna's shadow. Jinna was shocked but felt a little relief, realizing that the shadow creature belonged to her older brother. The shadow-high orc counterattacked, striking the orc so hard it went through the school's roof. Two more shadow-high orcs emerged, ready to protect their master's little sister. The scene shifts back to the raid in Busan, where the hunters have entered a dungeon that looks like the ruins of an ancient tomb. Soon, they come face to face with a twin-headed ogre. Jong-soo warns everyone to stay alert. Suddenly, the monster charges, swinging its massive axe. Jong-soo quickly activates a protective spell, successfully blocking the attack. One of the hunters dashes up the monster's body, slashing its two eyes. As the creature loses its sight, two other hunters move in, slicing off its arms. From behind, the hunter mages start casting spells, unleashing fire and lightning magic that strikes the monster, causing it to collapse instantly. Jong-soo then tells Jinwoo that this raid won't be easy. If they're already facing twin-headed ogres at the start, the next challenge will be an army of undead. As predicted, hundreds of undead monsters appear before them. The hunters immediately prepare for battle. However, the undead hesitate, unsure of whether to attack. The hunters notice something strange. Normally, they would rush in to attack at the first sight of the enemy, but now they seem to be afraid of something. Meanwhile, Jinwoo thinks this might be boring. He'd hoped for a fight with higher-level monsters in this dungeon. He wonders if he should have brought his mom along for the extra challenge. Suddenly, he feels a strong signal from the shadow soldier he placed on Jinna, signaling a bad feeling about his sister's situation. Jinwoo tells Jongsu he has to leave immediately. There's an urgent issue he can't ignore. Jongsu refuses, insisting that Jinwoo's presence is critical for their safety. Torn, Jinwoo decides to leave behind one of his shadow soldiers to handle things here. He summons Beru, and the appearance of the shadow soldier shocks Jongsu and his team, as they recognize Beru as the Ant King from Jeju Island. Without much explanation, Jinwoo orders Beru to protect the humans while giving him the freedom to handle non-humans as he sees fit. Beru understands and prepares to follow his master's orders. Releasing his aura, Beru sends a chill through the hunters around him, who now regret their earlier disrespect toward Jinwoo. To further strengthen their defenses, Jinwoo summons more ant shadow soldiers, ensuring that 20 of them will be enough to help them complete the raid. However, Jongsu and Yerim worry about the possibility of the shadow soldiers losing control. Their concerns offend Jinwoo. Firmly, he points out that it's better to accept the help than to have none at all. His anger leaves them with no choice but to agree. Jinwoo feels the need to leave the dungeon immediately, but with his shadow exchange skill still in cooldown, frustration builds inside him. Without wasting another moment, he sprints toward the exit at full speed. Just then, the undead army appears in front of him, blocking his path. Jinwoo pulls out his dagger, ready to face the obstacle. But strangely, the undead kneel before him, as if offering their respect. Jinwoo is taken aback, suspecting they might be bowing to him because of his status as the Shadow Monarch. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps over the undead army and quickly summons Kaisel. He activates his Domain of the Monarch skill, boosting Kaisel's stats by 50%, ordering him to fly as fast as possible to Jinna's location. The scene shifts to the school, where the Shadow Warrior High Orcs have defeated the Orc monsters. The students watch in shock and confusion, wondering if the 3 monsters they saw were protecting them. One of the Shadow Warrior High Orcs stands carefully, guarding Jinna. He then points in a direction, telling Jinna that a new threat is about to appear. Meanwhile, inside the school dungeon, an Orc warlord and the chief of the Red Blade tribe, Grokter, sits on his throne. Soon, one of his subordinates reports that the humans who were once in danger are now being protected by 3 Shadow Warrior High Orcs. Grokter is stunned, unable to believe that the powerful Orc warriors couldn't defeat the High Orcs. Furious, he orders his subordinates to lead the way, ready to slaughter them himself. The scene shifts back to the dungeon, where the Shadow Ant soldiers start moving. This fills the hunters with fear, worried that the summoned creatures might lose control and turn on them. Jongsu ponders whether they should retreat from the dungeon, but remembers the reporters waiting outside. He starts to think of an excuse he can give them. He considers telling them they're retreating because they're afraid of Jinwoo's summoned soldiers. Suddenly, Beru appears in front of him, startling Jongsu and sending a chill of fear through him. Beru doesn't give Jongsu a chance to retreat, throwing something at him before continuing down the dungeon. It turns out to be the head of a Death Knight monster. The hunters, witnessing this, are astonished and comment on how easily the ants took down such a high-level monster. Jongsu smiles, realizing the advantages of having ants this strong. He urges his team to continue the raid. However, without him noticing, his team has already advanced ahead, following the ant shadow soldiers. The scene shifts to the school, where a fierce battle is raging between Grokter and 3 shadow soldiers of the High Orc. The roars of the orcs echoed through the air, as if they were cheering for their favorite wrestler. Grokter, proudly displaying the tattoos across his body, acted as though each mark was a glorious testament to the countless battles he had fought, despite the possibility that some of them could have just been from drunken nights. He stared down the Shadow Warriors, challenging them to prove their worth. Grokter swings his sword with full force. However, one of the Shadow Warriors manages to block the strike. Surprised, Grokter intensifies his attack and succeeds in slicing one of the warriors in half. However, the split warrior quickly regenerates in seconds. Grokter is left speechless as if he had just watched a magic trick gone wrong. Suddenly, a sharp pain hits his head, accompanied by a mysterious command urging him to kill a human. Realizing he needs to end the fight quickly, Grokter shifts his gaze to Jinna, who's hiding behind one of the Shadow Warriors. He soon realizes that the source of the Shadow Warrior's magic power is the girl. Grokter orders his subordinates to relentlessly attack the Shadow Warriors. The orcs rush in, surrounding and launching brutal attacks, overwhelming the Shadow Warriors with sheer numbers. Meanwhile, the students, witnessing the chaos, were losing their minds, panicking like they'd just seen a ghost. Grokter sees his chance, grabs Jinna by the head with his massive hand, preparing to finish her off. Suddenly, he feels an ominous aura approaching. His body trembles with fear. In a hurry, he releases his grip and warns his subordinates to brace for impact. A massive explosion demolishes the school wall, and a figure steps forward calmly, telling Jinna that everything will be okay. It's Jinwoo, who had just arrived with Kai-Sel, smashing through the wall. Grokter realizes the terrifying presence in front of him and introduces himself as the chieftain of the Red Blade. However, Jinwoo points at him and sternly orders the monster to shut up and wait. He then asks about Jinna's friends, making sure they were all right. But when he saw his sister's face, he realized she had just been grabbed by that ugly monster, and that only made him angrier. Jinwoo summoned Igris to protect Jinna, then called forth some Shadow Knights to escort the students out of the area. As the humans attempted to flee, the monsters prepared to attack. But Jinwoo immediately stares them down and commands them on the monster's tongue to stay put. With the help of the Shadow soldiers, the students were successfully evacuated. Once everyone was safe, Grokter began to wonder if the immortal warriors he'd seen earlier were under Jinwoo's control and how Jinwoo could speak their language. But Jinwoo remained silent, consumed by rage. Seeing no response from him, Grokter ordered his troops to attack. The monsters charged forward. When one of the orcs swung its axe, Jinwoo swiftly grabbed its arm and slammed the creature to the ground. With cold brutality, he crushes its head under his foot. Two more monsters rushed at him. Jinwoo activates his Dominator touch skill, and with a wave of his hand, he easily controls their bodies. With another swift move, Jinwoo shatters both monsters' bodies instantly. Watching this, the remaining orcs became furious and attacked Jinwoo all at once. But with incredible speed, Jinwoo slaughtered them all in a single motion. Grokter couldn't believe how easily his forces were defeated. In a flash, Jinwoo grabbed Grokter by the head and smashed him hard against the wall. Jinwoo's fury boiled over as he looked at the bodies of the massacred students. He demanded to know why the monsters were so merciless toward humans. Grokter explained that they were under orders to kill humans. With a sharp glare, Jinwoo asked if that order included killing him too. Panicking, the ugly orc stammered out a denial, begging for mercy as tears streamed down his face. Annoyed, Jinwoo sneered and asked if he wasn't considered human. He then coldly declared that the orc's death would be painful. Jinwoo drew his dagger and viciously hacked the ugly orc to pieces until he died. The scene shifts back to the dungeon, where Shadow Ant soldiers are seen feasting on the corpses of the undead army they had defeated. Yerim, noticing the high value of the monster corpses, tries to snatch one from the jaws of a Shadow Ant soldier. However, her actions disrupt and anger the soldier, leading to an unintentional injury. The ant soldier glares at her as if she'd insulted its mother or tried to steal its food. Beru quickly steps in to calm the situation. With a composed demeanor, he uses healing magic to treat Yerim's wounds. Yerim is stunned. She never expected a summoned creature like Beru to wield healing magic, let alone magic far superior to her own abilities. She couldn't help but feel a bit sheepish, realizing her powers were outclassed by a summon. As they ventured deeper into the dungeon, they arrived at the boss room. The room was guarded by high-level undead soldiers, while arch-liches, the dungeon bosses, floated above them. The appearance of the arch-liches shocked the hunters, as they realized these monsters were far more powerful than the Death Knight they had faced before. Jiangsu anxiously warns his team about the arch-liches, telling them how these monsters once wiped out the Gold Dragon Guild in China, causing a dungeon break that only national-level hunter Lu Jigang could stop. He also points out that the undead soldiers here are no joke, as their strength surpasses A-rank hunters. However, the situation gets worse as the undead soldiers come back to life, cutting off their escape. Panicking, Jiangsu shouts at Yerim to block the entrance. Yerim quickly activates her Holy Wall skill, creating a magical barrier to hold off the advancing undead. In this situation, Jiangsu realized that without Jinwoo, completing this raid would be nearly impossible. Under immense pressure, Yerim warns Jiangsu that her skill will only last for 5 more minutes. Amid the chaos, Beru calmly stepped forward, closing in on the dungeon boss and his forces. The archliches stared at him, puzzled, wondering why the monarch's personal troops were attacking them. They were supposed to be allies. Beru pointed at the archliches and said, "We have been chosen by the monarch, and you weren't." Stunned, the archliches demanded to hear it straight from the monarch. Suddenly, Beru closed the gap in a flash, and delivered a powerful blow, taunting, "You talk way too much for someone who's about to die." Beru smashed archliches to the ground. He yanked out archlich's life core and smashed it to bits in no time. With the dungeon boss out of the picture, the undead army around them just collapsed, dead all over again. Beru let out a victorious roar, totally proud of himself. Watching from afar, Jiangsu was seriously impressed. Summoning beasts like that usually drains a summoner dry, but Jinwoo looked like he hadn't even broken a sweat. Jinwoo was on a whole other level, way beyond what any major guild could handle. It was almost unfair, like watching someone speedrun a game while everyone else struggled on the tutorial level. Yuntae, totally wowed by Jinwoo's strength, suggested teaming up with his guild. Jiangsu was skeptical. It sounded too good to be true. Yuntae admitted, though reluctantly, that a hunter as strong as Jinwoo probably didn't need backup. The guy could clear high-level dungeons with the same effort most people put into microwaving leftovers. But then Jiangsu remembered the Hunter Association's rules about having enough people for raids. Even Jinwoo had to play by the book. Yuntae thought this was their big break. Their guild could make up the numbers, and with Jinwoo's power leading the charge, any raid would be a sure win. With renewed enthusiasm, Jiangsu decided to pitch the idea to Jinwoo. This was an opportunity too good to pass up, even if it felt a bit like convincing a cat to swim. The scene shifts to the school, where hunters have arrived at the site and begun evacuating the victims. The air is thick with the heart-wrenching cries of parents grieving for their lost children, while reports confirm that 213 students have died in this dungeon break incident. Meanwhile, an association vehicle zooms through the traffic. During the ride, Mr. Go's worried about the incident, emphasizing the large number of student casualties. He shows Jinwoo a graph on his phone that tracks the rising number of gates appearing across Korea in the past 6 months. Similar phenomena are occurring worldwide, with an increasing number of individuals awakening and becoming hunters as more gates emerge, as if the world is trying to create a new balance. In his mind, Jinwoo finds this odd, realizing that the world is undergoing a massive shift. He then asks Mr. Go what he wants to discuss. Mr. Go hands Jinwoo a document containing official requests from major countries such as Japan, China, Russia, the United States, and even the Middle East. They all wish to establish contact with him and are eager to recruit him to their respective nations. Mr. Go stresses that the final decision is entirely up to Jinwoo. However, he also voices his concern that if a hunter of Jinwoo's caliber were to leave Korea, the country might struggle to adapt to the significant changes happening. A short while later, they arrive at the hospital where Jin-ah is being treated. As Jinwoo steps out of the car, Mr. Go reassures him that the association is willing to offer anything to convince him to stay in Korea and asks him to name any request he desires. Jinwoo leans forward, his eyes serious, stating his desire to enter high-level dungeons alone. Mr. Go falls silent for a moment, pondering Jinwoo's request. He knows it violates the minimum headcount rule, an association regulation designed to protect hunters from unnecessary risk. However, he realizes that Jinwoo's desire to establish his own guild is deeply connected to this goal. Jinwoo confirms this, explaining that he simply wants to work alone. Though it's a tough request, Mr. Go admits that removing the rule isn't entirely impossible. He tells Jinwoo to leave it to him and promises to take care of it. The scene then shifts to a Jin guild, where Jinho is on the phone with his cousin, Yoo Soo-hyun, a well-known hunter and celebrity in Korea. Jinho invites Soo-hyun to join his guild, assuring her that being part of an unofficial guild would be more beneficial than being tied to her father's guild. Soo-hyun is skeptical of the offer, suspecting that Jinho might have fallen for a scam. However, with a mysterious tone, Jinho insists that she'll be shocked once she finds out who the guildmaster is. He urges her to come and see for herself, piquing Soo-hyun's curiosity. At the guild office, Jinwoo immediately asks Jinho about the woman with him. Jinho explains that she's his cousin, Yoo Soo-hyun, an A-rank hunter. Soo-hyun is stunned when she sees Jinwoo, recognizing him as the famous S-rank hunter in Korea. Jinho smirks and nudges her playfully, noting how easily she gets surprised for a celebrity. As they talk, Jinwoo confirms that Jinho has explained everything. Soo-hyun acknowledges this and agrees to join a Jin guild, even admitting that she prefers this option over joining her father's guild. She then asks if she can take a picture with Jinwoo and post it on Instagram. In no time, the post goes viral, garnering over 200,000 likes with the caption, "First day of a Jin guild." Hunter Cha, who comes across the post, is visibly shocked. Her body trembles slightly, like a phone on 1% battery with no charger in sight. The scene shifts to the National Assembly building of Korea, where a meeting is underway to discuss Jinwoo's request. Congressman Junwook Nam firmly rejects the request, arguing that it makes no sense for summoned creatures to be counted as raid members, deeming it unworthy. He insists that the Hunter Association must remain fair and impartial. Approving such a request, he argues, would make them appear biased toward Jinwoo. Nam presses Mr. Go for an explanation of the situation. With a serious expression, Mr. Go acknowledges that this is indeed preferential treatment for Jinwoo. He then poses a question to everyone present. If they had to choose between a raid composed of 20 A-rank hunters or a raid led by Jinwoo to handle a dungeon break, which would they prefer? Mr. Go then takes a jab at Congressman Nam, pointing out that his new apartment is near the Hunters Guild. He emphasizes that like most wealthy individuals, Nam has chosen to live in a safe area, close to someone strong enough to protect them. This reflects a global phenomenon, where guilds worldwide are racing to recruit Jinwoo. He reminds everyone that if an S-rank gate suddenly appeared, who could protect their country? The next day, a Jin guild successfully secures preferential treatment from the Korean Hunter Association and embarks on their first raid. Association staff have secured the surrounding area to ensure a smooth operation. However, the atmosphere shifts suddenly as reporters swarm in, bombarding Jinwoo with a barrage of questions. They ask about his thoughts on his guild's debut raid and his relationship with the famous celebrity Yoo Soo-hyun. Suddenly, Jinchul appears, trying to control the situation. Jinwoo questions whether the association is failing to protect his personal information. Jinchul explains that while his personal data has been safeguarded, information about the gate's location is difficult to keep secret. He also advises Jinwoo to avoid posting anything on Instagram in the future. Jinwoo offers a sheepish smile, realizing that his photo with Soo-hyun had put a Jin guild in the media spotlight. Meanwhile, Jinho is surprised by how big the gate is. He feels they might need to hire a mining team. He's worried they can't handle it alone. However, Jinwoo summons his shadow soldiers and explains that they will handle the work. Curious, Jinchul takes out a manometer to measure the magic power of one of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers. The result shocks him. One shadow soldier possesses strength equivalent to a B-rank hunter, or even higher. With power like this, he muses, only a fool would dare challenge Jinwoo. Equipping his combat gear, Jinchul explains that the association president has ordered him to monitor the raid's safety, so he will join as an observer. Jinwoo asks if he's sure, and Jinchul confidently assures him that it's no big deal. However, his expression changes as he witnesses the brutality of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers in action. The Shadow Knights tear through A-rank monsters with ruthless efficiency. Tank slashes through a monster's head in a single swipe, while Iron commands the ant soldiers to slaughter the incoming monster hordes. On the other side, Baru effortlessly decapitates monsters with his razor-sharp claws. Jinchul watches in awe as he watches their regenerative abilities render the monsters helpless. His gaze shifts to Igris, who wields the Demon King's sword. As Igris swings his blade, crackling arcs of magical lightning tear through the air with immense power. His masterful swordplay weaves intricate webs of lightning, which explode in a dazzling spectacle, obliterating the monsters without any resistance. Jinchul is dumbfounded by the display, realizing that these summoned creatures surpass A-rank hunters and might even rival S-rank hunters. He acknowledges that facing them one-on-one would be a losing battle. Meanwhile, the ant soldiers continue devouring the heads of their prey with unsettling dedication. Annoyed, Jinwoo kicks one of them onto the dungeon ceiling and sternly reminds them that monster corpses are worth money, not a free meal. He then turns to the other shadow soldiers, making it clear that standing around wasn't an option. Those magic crystals weren't going to mine themselves. Jinchul is left speechless. This is something he's never seen before. Jinwoo can handle everything effortlessly on his own. At this moment, he finally realizes why the association president wanted him to observe this raid. After all the guardian monsters were annihilated, only the dungeon boss remained, a colossal humanoid serpent wielding 2 tridents as its weapons. Jinwoo decided to recall some of his shadow soldiers back into the darkness. Jinchul frowned, clearly puzzled by the move. He asked why Jinwoo reduced the number of summons when they were strong enough to handle the boss. Jinwoo casually twirled his daggers and said if he leaned too much on his summons, his skills would get rusty. The dungeon boss attacked with full force, but Jinwoo swiftly dodged. He dashed along the monster's massive body with incredible speed and slashed its head, splitting it in half. With a single decisive strike, the A-rank dungeon boss was defeated. A system notification popped up. You have killed the dungeon boss. He also received a notification that his level had increased to 101, and all of his job-specific skills had leveled up, including Shadow Extraction, Save Shadow, Domain of the Monarch, and Shadow Exchange. A satisfied grin spread across Jinwoo's face. With the cooldown of Shadow Exchange reduced by an hour, he felt more relieved knowing he could better protect his mother and sister in the future. Standing near the monster's corpse, Jinchul couldn't hide his amazement. He realized that Jinwoo could pierce through the monster's incredibly tough scales using just his 2 daggers. Jinwoo stepped closer to the dungeon boss's corpse and uttered a single word, "Arise." Dark shadows slowly emerged from the monster's body, forming a new shadow soldier ranked elite knight. Jinwoo noted that the summon was smaller than its original form, but its magical power was almost on par with Tusk. He then approached the shadow soldier, touched its head, and named it Jima. On the other hand, Jinho watched in awe, astonished by Jinwoo's ability to turn such a powerful monster into his summon. However, his attention quickly shifted when he noticed the dungeon's ceiling starting to crumble, signaling that the dungeon was about to collapse. Jinho warned Jinwoo to get out immediately. Jinwoo understood the situation but was puzzled about how to transport the massive dungeon boss's corpse. Outside the dungeon, waiting reporters were left speechless as they saw the towering shadow soldier emerge from the gate, carrying the monster's corpse on its shoulders. Camera flashes filled the air, capturing every moment with excitement. Tusk, feeling like a celebrity, flashed an awkward but proud grin, soaking up the attention. Jinwoo and Jinho realized that their debut raid had attracted massive public attention. Meanwhile, Jinchul's face remained visibly shaken as he exited the dungeon, as if the terror he had witnessed still haunted his thoughts. Even at the Hunter Association office, Jinchul still looked like he'd seen a ghost as he reported to Mr. Go. With cold sweat trickling down his face, Jinchul stated that what he had just experienced wasn't a typical raid, it was a massacre. Seeing Jinchul's condition, Mr. Go advised him to take a rest. In his mind, Mr. Go couldn't believe that Jinwoo managed everything on his own, defeating monsters, mining magic crystals, and even transporting the monster's corpse. He felt that calling Jinwoo a one-man raid team was an understatement. The most fitting title would be One-Man Guild, where Jinwoo himself was the guild. Mr. Go was convinced that his initial impression of Jinwoo had been right all along. He was certain the global rankings of top hunters were about to change. The scene shifts to Shinjuku District, Tokyo, Japan. A massive gate suddenly appeared in the sky out of nowhere. The people in the area were stunned, watching as the ominous gate exuded an overwhelming sense of menace that couldn't be ignored. Everyone could only stand still, staring at the terrifying phenomenon in stunned silence. Meanwhile, at Japan's National Assembly building, 4 S-rank hunters from the Drawsword Guild walked into the hall. But their arrival was met with sneers from 3 congressmen, who taunted them by saying that the Drawsword Guild was on the verge of collapse after failing their raid mission on Jeju Island. They also mentioned that the guild had lost 7 S-rank hunters, including Gato Ruji. Hearing this, the hunters quickly turned around and shot the congressmen sharp, piercing glares. Intimidated, the congressmen scurried off like nothing had happened. Hoshino let out an annoyed snort, remarking that people had gotten bolder since Gato Ruji's death. An emergency meeting was underway to address the emergence of an S-rank gate in Shinjuku district. High-ranking Japanese officials were gathered to assess the situation. One congressman, visibly agitated, demanded why the Hunter Association hadn't taken action yet. He warned that this delay could result in a dungeon break, a catastrophic event where monsters spill out of the gate, endangering the entire country. Matsumoto stepped in, pointing out that it was impossible for S-rank hunters to handle an S-rank gate alone. He emphasized the urgent need for help from national-level hunters to tackle the looming threat. One of the hunters suggested asking for Thomas Andre's assistance. However, another congressman expressed doubts, questioning whether Japan could even afford to hire Thomas Andre, especially with gates popping up across the globe and resources stretched thin. He remarked that seeking help from other nations might not be a realistic option in the current global crisis. Sugimoto broke the silence. He said he knew someone who could help, as long as they were willing to pay. He was planning to recruit Yuri Orlov, an S-rank hunter from Russia. Meanwhile, a van cruised down the road, driven by Jinwoo on his way to the guild office. While steering, he retrieved the key to Kartinon Temple from his inventory system. In his mind, he couldn't wait to see what mission the system would assign him after reaching level 101. Upon arriving at the parking lot, Jinwoo figured Jinho was probably working hard, handling the office tasks all by himself. Suddenly, he spotted Hunter Cha arriving. However, she quickly turned around, trying to avoid him. Jinwoo swiftly approached her and directly asked about the reason for her visit. Awkwardly, Hunter Cha claimed her car was still parked there. Jinwoo realized this was because he had used the shadow exchange skill earlier. In reality, Hunter Cha wanted to ask about Jinwoo's relationship with Soohyun, but she dismissed the thought and offered another reason instead. She said she had received a message from Hunter Min Byungyu regarding Jinwoo's powers. Jinwoo was surprised to hear that and immediately invited her inside the guild office to discuss it further. Inside, Jinwoo asked straight away about the message and how Min Byungyu managed to deliver it. Hunter Cha then explained that Shadow Byungyu had suddenly appeared in her subconscious. The figure looked frightened and warned Jinwoo to be cautious about his powers. He revealed that someone had pulled him out from an endless darkness. In a serious tone, Byungyu warned that Jinwoo's powers were both immensely strong and dangerous, hoping Jinwoo would come to understand that as well. The next day, the Ajin Guild went on another raid. But unlike a typical hunter raid, it looked more like a picnic. They snacked and chatted casually while the Shadow Warriors did all the hard work defeating the monsters in the dungeon. Jinho commented on how convenient it was. All the work could be handed off to the summoned creatures while they relaxed. But Jinwoo didn't quite see it that way. Pointing at one of the shadow ants, he highlighted how it attempted to use a monster carcass when they weren't paying attention. For a moment, Jinwoo reflected on Hunter Cha's words. If what she said was true, he realized it was more important to understand the source of his power rather than simply striving to grow stronger. Jinho then asked about Jinna's condition following the dungeon break incident at her school. Jinwoo explained that his younger sister just needed rest. Jinwoo then closed his eyes and activated the skill Shadow Storage Level 2. With the level up, he could now use the additional Share Sense effect, which allowed him to see through the eyes of a chosen Shadow Warrior. Jinwoo saw Jinna sound asleep in front of the TV, while Beru, instead of standing guard, was happily holding the remote and engrossed in a Korean drama. Jinwoo sighed, realizing this might explain why Beru always spoke in such a peculiar way. Next, Jinwoo shifted to another shadow warrior, who was watching over his mother during her shopping trip, and observed Yunho engaging in a heated argument with Hunter Choi. But suddenly, his vision shifted to a shower with water dripping. It took him a few seconds to realize that he was looking at Hunter Cha soaking in the bathtub. Jinwoo was instantly startled. His face turned red as he realized he had just accidentally peeped on Hunter Cha while she was bathing. He felt he owed her an apology and perhaps even a treat to make up for it. At the same time, Jinho talked about an S-rank gate that had appeared in Shinjuku District, Japan. It was estimated to undergo a dungeon break in 3 days. Hunters from all over the world were being gathered, and he asked if the Japanese authorities had contacted Jinwoo. Jinwoo confirmed that they had reached out to him. However, he responded that he had a more pressing task to handle first. Jinwoo then brought out the key of Kartinan Temple and checked the countdown, which showed 27 hours remaining before the gate would open. In his mind, he realized that this key wasn't just an ordinary item. It was an invitation from the system. And that place, without a doubt, would hold all the answers about his powers. The scene shifts to a mansion where someone is boasting about himself. The man is Yuri Orlov, a Russian S-rank hunter specializing in support magic, particularly magic barriers. Facing him are Japanese hunters, seeking his assistance. Sugimoto starts explaining the situation they're dealing with. For managing the A-rank gates emerging all across Japan, every major guild has deployed at least one S-rank hunter. As a result, they are now short on manpower to handle bigger threats. Drunk, Orlov chuckles softly and remarks that Japan's situation is quite dire. However, he claims he's the right person to evacuate the citizens quickly. Arrogantly, he offers his services at a rate of $3.6 billion annually or $10 million per day. For that price, he guarantees the ability to hold the gates for as long as needed. Hearing the figures, Sugimoto is taken aback and questions whether Orlov is truly serious about such high rates. With a sly grin, Orlov assures him that for $3.6 billion a year, he can save Japan. He even adds that his rates are cheaper compared to hiring Thomas Andre. Mockingly, Orlov says Japan has only one simple choice: pay $10 million per day to save the country or let it crumble to save money. Sugimoto begins doubting Orlov's skills, stating that his big mouth better match his capabilities. Confidently, Orlov retorts that hiring him is far more effective than employing hundreds of weak hunters who are as incompetent as the 2 Japanese hunters sitting before him. Hoshino and Tawada were annoyed. They didn't fully get what Orlov was saying, but it was obvious he'd just thrown an insult their way. Suddenly, Orlov unleashes his skill. A powerful barrier forms, trapping Hoshino and Tawada within it. With a condescending tone, Orlov warns them not to move without his permission and dares them to break free from the barrier if they can. Hoshino and Tawada are shocked, realizing their bodies can't move at all. Reluctantly, Sugimoto finally acknowledges Orlov's abilities and states that he'll contact the government about the requested fees. Meanwhile, at his apartment, Jinwoo is preparing to head somewhere. From behind, his mother approaches him with a worried expression. However, Jinwoo quickly reassures her not to worry. As he opens the door, he promises he'll be back soon. A system notification pops up, informing him that the location of Kartinan Temple's gate will be revealed within seconds. Meanwhile, at Jinna's school, the area was cordoned off with police tape, and Hunter Association officers were busy securing the site. They were puzzled. A gate appearing twice in the same location was extremely rare. A female officer on duty quickly noticed someone approaching. She immediately stepped forward, blocking the way and warning them not to get any closer. But as soon as she recognized who it was, she hesitated. It was Jinwoo. Jinwoo asked about the gate's status. The officer explained that it was just a C-rank gate that had appeared 3 days ago. About 2 hours ago, a team of hunters had already entered to conduct a raid. Jinwoo's eyes widened in shock. The gate wasn't supposed to open before its location was officially revealed. Realizing something was off, Jinwoo firmly warned them that the raid needed to be stopped immediately. If not, everyone inside could die. But the confused officer tried to stop him. insisting it was just a C-rank gate. Ignoring her, Jinwoo stepped forward into the gate, leaving the officers outside completely bewildered. Inside the dungeon, the hunters had just wrapped up their fight against the monsters and stood before a massive gate, struggling to open it despite all attempts. While brainstorming for solutions, Jinwoo suddenly appeared, warning them that the gate was a trap. Jinwoo's arrival shocked the hunters, and they questioned how he knew it was a trap. Calmly, Jinwoo explained he was a survivor of the double dungeon and urged them to leave for their safety. Stepping toward the gate, Jinwoo noticed it behaved differently than before. A system notification popped up, revealing that the Cart Enon Temple required a key to unlock. Using the black key he'd obtained earlier, Jinwoo successfully opened the gate, stunning the hunters. The raid leader argued the dungeon belonged to their guild. He warned Jinwoo not to overstep simply because of his S-rank hunter status. After a quick pause, Jinwoo let him do whatever he wanted. Confidently, the raid leader entered, but the system denied his access. Suddenly, a giant stone statue inside attacked at lightning speed. Jinwoo swiftly pulled him back, saving his life. With the colossal statue's gaze fixed on the hunters outside, Jinwoo cautioned them again. The monsters within were all equally deadly. He declared their only option was to report the double dungeon's appearance to the Hunter Association. Without waiting for their reply, Jinwoo entered the Cart Enon Temple alone. As the gates closed behind him, eerie blue flames illuminated the room, which brimmed with towering statues. Walking further, Jinwoo noticed everything mirrored his previous encounter, but felt different now. No longer weak, he realized the statues weren't living creatures but puppets controlled by someone. He stopped at the most potent magical energy source in the room, a hooded angel statue, and accused him of being the hidden boss of the double dungeon. When he remained silent, Jinwoo mocked him to speak up. Suddenly he grinned, his menacing smile making it seem as if he was welcoming Jinwoo's arrival. The scene shifts to Japan's international airport. The moment Yuri Orlov arrives, reporters swarm him, all eager to get a statement. They immediately bombard him with questions about how he plans to handle the Rank S gate threatening Japan. With unwavering confidence, Orlov explains that he'll approach it the usual way, by drawing a massive magic circle around the gate and channeling all his magic into it. Using this method, nothing inside the gate will be able to escape. However, the reporters doubt whether Orlov can contain a Rank S gate on his own. Calmly, Orlov clarifies that as long as his barrier gets a sufficient supply of mana, he can handle it. That's why they need to set up mana crystals all over Tokyo. By absorbing energy from these crystals, his barrier will grow stronger, creating an impenetrable wall of defense. Arrogantly, Orlov concludes his statement. He assures everyone that he will save them. All they need to do is remember who their savior was. News of Hunter Yuri Orlov's arrival spreads across the globe. In Korea, Mr. Go watches the broadcast with a heavy heart. Whether Orlov can contain the Rank S gate or not, one thing is certain: if he fails, the consequences will be catastrophic. Mr. Go then asks for the latest updates on Jinwoo. Jinchul pulls up the raid data from the Ajin Guild and reveals something surprising. The newly formed guild is performing on par with major guilds, even though they only have one S-rank hunter. Mr. Go lets a faint smile slip as he reads the report. He admits this is quite intriguing. A small guild with just one hunter holding its ground against the giants is anything but ordinary. But their conversation gets interrupted when Jinchul's phone buzzes. He quickly answers the call and learns that the gate that reappeared at the school is actually a double dungeon, and Jinwoo has already entered it. Jinchul is stunned, realizing this is no trivial matter. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the angelic entity in front of Jinwoo began to tremble. Suddenly, his 6 wings flapped powerfully, creating immense pressure around him. In one swift motion, he crushed the giant tombstone he was holding into pieces, a daunting welcome for Jinwoo. Jinwoo watched him cautiously. He felt that if the rules written on the tombstone could be broken so easily, then their existence was truly meaningless. With a sharp tone, he directly questioned the entity, asking if he was the one who summoned him here and who he really was. The entity smirked and replied that the question wasn't who he was, but rather who Jinwoo had become now. He then clapped his hands, causing all the giant statues in the temple to start moving toward Jinwoo. The entity declared that this was the final test and promised to reveal everything if Jinwoo could pass it. Calmly, Jinwoo summoned his shadow army, but the entity snapped his fingers, nullifying Jinwoo's skill instantly. Smirking, he said that the game didn't work that way. This was the final test, to assess Jinwoo's own strength, not his army's. A system notification popped up. Class-specific skills are restricted for the final test. Use of potions and store functions is prohibited, along with recovery effects from leveling up and quest bonuses. The final test must be completed before exiting. Jinwoo was stunned by the messages. All his trump cards were wiped out in an instant. Despite many of his skills being restricted, he could still use his inventory. There was no choice. He had to overcome this using his own strength. At that moment, the giant statues surrounded him. One swung its spear toward him. Jinwoo swiftly grabbed the spear, snapped it in half with one strike, then hurled the broken tip at the head of the giant statue. He leapt onto the embedded spear fragment, crushing the statue instantly. At the same time, another statue attacked him with a massive axe. Jinwoo quickly drew his dagger and sliced the axe in two. Using the broken axe as a foothold, he shot toward the statue and plunged his dagger straight into its head, destroying it in an instant. Meanwhile, the archer statue fired an arrow, but Jinwoo rapidly sliced it in half and kicked the broken arrow straight at the archer statue's head, shattering it completely. Several statues attacked simultaneously, but he managed to withstand all their strikes. Above, the angelic entity watched the battle with a smirk, recognizing Jinwoo's incredible growth for a human. However, he thought the test couldn't end just yet and decided to add more challenges for his amusement. As if responding to his decision, the statue of God, which had been seated on the throne, began to rise and move. Jinwoo was startled to see it. The greatest threat in the room was now joining the fight. The statue of God gazed at Jinwoo with an unsettling, intimidating grin. The angelic entity grinned alongside him and declared, "Now it's time to worship God." The scene shifted to the Korean Hunters Association's office, where a meeting was taking place between Mr. Go and the chairman of the Japanese Hunters Association, Matsumoto Shigeo, accompanied by his interpreter, Hanekawa. Without beating around the bush, Matsumoto handed over a document. He explained that it was a contract stating Japan would not take any magic crystals from Jeju Island. In exchange, however, they wanted to hire hunter Sung Jinwoo. Mr. Go responded flatly, stating that Jinwoo was not part of the Korean Hunters Association. Matsumoto acknowledged this but pointed out that since Jinwoo was Korean, contacting him directly without going through the Korean Hunters Association would be nearly impossible. This was simply his attempt to negotiate with him. As he reviewed the letter in his hand, Mr. Go reflected on the fact that, without Go-To Ruji, handling the S-rank gate had become significantly more difficult. However, with this amount of money offered for Jinwoo, the deal didn't sound too bad. Mr. Go set the letter down and decided to discuss the matter directly, without an interpreter. Matsumoto appeared surprised, questioning whether Mr. Go could speak Japanese. Calmly, Mr. Go revealed that it wasn't an issue. He had spent his childhood in Japan, where his father had conducted business. After that, both interpreters left the room. Once only the two of them remained, Mr. Go warned Matsumoto to stop playing dirty. He had heard rumors of Matsumoto trying to take over the Drawsword Guild. Matsumoto rose from his seat, vehemently denying the accusation. However, Mr. Go remained calm and took out a black box, placing it on the table. With a serious expression, he explained that it was a black box from Japan's transceiver, containing recorded communications from the Japanese team on Jeju Island. The recordings revealed their plans to promote Go-To Ruji as a national-level hunter and eliminate Korea's S-rank hunters. Matsumoto froze in fear. His face turned pale, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Mr. Go unleashed an intimidating wave of magical energy and crushed the black box in his hand. With a piercing stare, he declared that he wouldn't publicize its contents. However, he condemned Matsumoto's actions, which endangered not only one country but all of Asia. Mr. Go emphasized that Matsumoto should be grateful to hunter Sung Jinwoo for ensuring the raid on Jeju Island ended in victory. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was still fighting the giant statues, But he was starting to struggle as they kept coming non-stop. Suddenly, Jinwoo felt something and turned to look at the statue of God, who was preparing to fire a laser from his eyes. Realizing there wasn't enough time to dodge, Jinwoo quickly activated his Dominator touch skill, controlling the nearby giant statues to form a shield. In the blink of an eye, the statue of God fired the laser, blasting through the statue shields and shattering them into pieces. Thanks to the temporary protection, Jinwoo managed to avoid getting hit directly. Realizing just how dangerous that attack was, he decided his priority was to take down the statue of God first. Out of nowhere, a system notification popped up. Skill Dominator Touch has upgraded to its final form, Ruler's Authority. The new skill allowed him to use telekinesis on a much larger scale. The statue of God attacked again, trying to stomp Jinwoo with his massive foot. Jinwoo dodged easily and leapt toward him. At the same moment, the statue of God began preparing his next strike. Sensing the danger, Jinwoo used his newly upgraded Ruler's Authority skill to change his trajectory mid-air, narrowly dodging another deadly laser beam. For a moment, he was amazed at how much stronger the skill was compared to before. Jinwoo now stood on the statue of God's shoulder. Without hesitation, he activated his mutilation skill, delivering a series of rapid critical strikes to the statue of God's face. But the attacks only left scratches. The statue of God responded with a chilling grin. Frustrated, Jinwoo realized his attacks weren't enough. Moving quickly, Jinwoo positioned himself near the crack, concentrated all his power into his right arm, and unleashed a punch with full force. The devastating blow caused massive destruction, and the statue of God collapsed to the ground. As Jinwoo landed, the other giant statues immediately surrounded and attacked him all at once. But Jinwoo calmly activated Ruler's Authority. In an instant, a powerful telekinetic force slammed all the statues to the ground, crushing them completely. For a moment, Jinwoo realized how much stronger he'd become through this fight. The angel statue approached, clapping slowly as if applauding the performance. Jinwoo glared at him, demanding that the angel entity keep his promise. But the angel just laughed, saying the test wasn't over. With a menacing smile, he confirmed that he himself was the final test. Suddenly, a system notification popped up. An emergency quest has started. Your heart will stop if you do not defeat the enemy in 10 minutes. Jinwoo was stunned and began to question the entity's true identity. The statue replied through a notification from the system, thinking the question was ridiculous. In a cold voice, he explained that he was the architect of Jinwoo's system. In other words, this being was the creator of the system that had guided Jinwoo all along. Outside the double dungeon, Jinchul arrived at the scene with 7 elite hunters from the association. He knew he probably wouldn't be much help to Jinwoo, but he came anyway to be ready for anything. As soon as he stood near the gate, a wave of terrifying magical energy slammed into him. The icy chill from the storm cut through him, freezing him in place for a moment. Jinchul turned to his team and instructed them to send an emergency request for cooperation with nearby major guilds and S-rank hunters from the Korean Association. In his head, he couldn't stop wondering, who was Sung Jinwoo? How was he able to predict this disaster so perfectly? Meanwhile, inside the double dungeon, Jinwoo noticed something strange. The architect's 6 wings began to spin. In an instant, transformed into 6 arms. Within seconds, the architect darted toward Jinwoo and struck him with 3 of those arms. Even though Jinwoo managed to block the attack, the sheer force of the blow sent him flying into the wall. The architect didn't give Jinwoo any time to recover. He launched a rapid barrage of attacks with all 6 arms. Jinwoo blocked every punch with his hands, even as the pressure kept increasing. The architect grinned, watching Jinwoo struggle. One punch landed square on Jinwoo's face, but Jinwoo quickly countered, landing a solid punch on the architect's face and sending him flying backward. With half of his face severely damaged, the architect sneered. He admitted that, for a lowly human, Jinwoo was actually proving to be an exhilarating opponent. He had never imagined a human would become his equal in battle. Despite the blood covering one of his eyes, Jinwoo was still determined to get answers. He demanded to know why the architect had created the system and why he had been chosen as the player. But the architect didn't respond with words. Instead, he lunged at Jinwoo, preparing to strike again. Jinwoo quickly created distance and launched a ranged attack using his ruler's authority skill. However, the architect dismissed it as pointless and countered with the same skill. The clash of their powers created a massive wave that threw Jinwoo backward. Frustrated, Jinwoo realized his ranged attacks weren't working either. As the fight reached a temporary pause, the architect grinned again. He activated his ruler's authority skill, grabbing all the nearby weapons and arming himself with them in his 8 hands. Remaining calm, Jinwoo drew his dagger and asked why the architect had given him such power. The architect explained that he was merely a designer and moderator of the player breeding system. He had never chosen Jinwoo as the player. In fact, he had opposed it. Jinwoo glanced at the system panel and realized time wasn't on his side. He had to end the fight as quickly as possible. Without warning, the architect leapt forward, launching an all-out attack with every weapon in his hands. Suddenly, Jinwoo felt his senses sharpen. He could predict every incoming attack, whether it was a sword, spear, club, axe, or hammer. He dodged them all effortlessly. The architect was stunned, realizing that Jinwoo was avoiding every move, even as he unleashed his full power. Not only that, but Jinwoo's speed had increased dramatically. In a flash, Jinwoo severed one of the architect's arms. The architect recoiled, shocked by how quickly Jinwoo was improving during the fight. He began to understand why Jinwoo had been chosen as the Shadow Monarch's successor. Enraged, the architect summoned all the giant statues to complicate the battle. As the massive statues charged at him, Jinwoo activated his ruler's authority skill, slamming them all into the ground. Without hesitation, he dashed straight toward the architect. The statue of God tried to stop him with a massive punch, but Jinwoo quickly dodged and launched himself at the architect, delivering a flurry of slashes that severed his arms one by one. The relentless assault continued until a massive explosion shook the dungeon. As the dust settled, Jinwoo stood with his dagger pressed against the architect's neck. Defeated, the architect admitted his loss and declared the test over. The system stopped the countdown at 2 minutes and 11 seconds. The architect pointed a finger at Jinwoo, hinting that all the answers he was looking for were already within him. A system notification popped up. The data stored in your memory will be retrieved. Will you accept? Jinwoo stared at the system window, hesitation clouding his thoughts as he considered the risk. After a brief pause, he made his decision and accepted the command. A bright light shot out from the system screen, enveloping Jinwoo and pulling him into another dimension. His consciousness shifted to an unfamiliar world where an endless purple sky stretched above him. His body transformed into a spirit-like form, floating in midair. Looking down, Jinwoo saw an army of monsters from different races gathered on a vast battlefield. They all stared intensely at the sky, drawing Jinwoo's curiosity to follow their gaze. In the sky, dozens of giant gates appeared one after another, cracking open larger and larger rifts between dimensions. The sheer number of them left Jinwoo confused and worried about the massive threat that could come if the monsters invaded the human world. Before his thoughts were consumed by fear, Jinwoo's attention was caught by a bright light streaming out of one of the gates. Emerging from it was a massive army of winged soldiers clad in silver armor, the legendary rulers. One of them blew a massive trumpet, signaling the start of an epic battle. The two armies clashed, with the sound of weapons striking and the roars of monsters echoing across the battlefield. However, the fight was anything but balanced. The ruler's army easily slaughtered the monsters without mercy. In the midst of the chaos, a mysterious figure riding a black horse entered the battlefield, radiating a terrifying aura. In a chilling voice, he uttered one word: "Arise." Immediately, dark power swept across the battlefield. The monsters that had fallen rose again as shadow soldiers. Their sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Their blood had been turned into a dark force to create a new army. From the sky, Jinwoo watched in disbelief, realizing his power was nothing compared to the Shadow Monarchs. The epic battle exploded once again, this time on completely different terms. What had been a one-sided slaughter now became a true war. The ever-regenerating Shadow Army forced the ruler's forces into an endless struggle. One figure turned the tide of the entire war. Riding his horse, the Shadow Monarch slaughtered the ruler's forces mercilessly. Wherever he went, destruction followed in his wake. Meanwhile, 7 top-tier hunters from the association, along with Hunters Guild members, had shown up at the Kartinan Temple. A powerful wave of magical energy surged from the gate, reaffirming their belief that Jinwoo was inside. Jinchul reminded the group that this was a double dungeon, a dangerous place he had heard about directly from Jinwoo. Hunter Cha, on the other hand, felt something odd. The magic radiating from the temple wasn't Jinwoo's, leaving her wondering whose power it truly was. The tension heightened as the temple doors slowly creaked open on their own. The hunters cautiously stepped inside, scanning their surroundings. They were met with a chilling sight: shattered remains of massive statues scattered across the temple floor, creating a haunting scene. The tension reached its peak when the architect appeared, his cold gaze locking onto the hunters. To him, they were nothing but lowly, uninvited humans trespassing in a sacred place. The hunters were stunned to discover that the monster could speak. In a chilling tone, he warned them to remain silent and not disturb the king's slumber. Inside the temple, Jinwoo stood motionless, his eyes blank as though trapped in a trance. The hunters were perplexed, wondering silently what he was doing there. Suddenly, the architect attacked with lethal precision, injuring 3 hunters in a single strike. Turning back with a menacing grin, he declared that humans as strong as they were worthy offerings for the monarch. Meanwhile, within Jinwoo's subconscious dimension, the Shadow Army had just claimed a hard-fought victory. But before they could savor their triumph, 2 enormous gates burst open on the battlefield. From the Blue Gate, a majestic demon army emerged, proudly carrying their banners. These were the same demon clans Jinwoo had encountered in Demon Castle, stirring his concern for Essel's fate. From the Red Gate, however, came a horde of ferocious beasts, led by a towering, fearsome wolf. Both commanders stood tall and defiant, throwing down a bold challenge to the Shadow Monarch for a climactic battle that would decide everything. Back at the Kartinan Temple, Hunter Choi instructed the hunters to regroup and move the injured to the rear lines. The architect unleashed his power again, bringing the stone warrior statues back to life. Grinning wickedly, he declared that the hunters would witness the birth of the great monarch, if they managed to survive. Behind him, the statue of God began charging a laser beam from its eyes. In the blink of an eye, the statue of God unleashed a massive laser attack, tearing through the ground around them. While some hunters managed to dodge, the pressure was overwhelming. Choi hurled a fireball straight at the statue of God, then ordered the other hunters to seize this opportunity to destroy the remaining stone statues. Jinchul struck one of the warrior statues with a powerful blow, but his attack had no effect. Supporting from a distance, Choi used his fire magic and warned the others that the monster was highly resistant to physical attacks. However, he was stunned to realize that even his fire magic barely worked, meaning the monster also had high resistance to magic. Desperation clouded Choi's face as he looked at Jinwoo. He believed that only Jinwoo could save them from this dire situation. Acting quickly, he sent a small flame to break Jinwoo free from the spell's grip. But the architect swiftly intercepted the attack and retaliated against Choi, roaring that no one could disturb the king in his slumber. Choi froze in terror as the architect charged toward him. However, Jinchul and the other hunters rushed in to block the architect's attack, saving Choi in the nick of time. Jinchul urgently commanded Hunter Cha to wake Jinwoo, while he and the others held the architect at bay. Hunter Cha dashed toward Jinwoo, but the architect moved to intercept her, his grin sinister, mocking the hunter's struggles as he asserted his dominance. In the depths of his subconscious, Jinwoo saw a massive battle unfolding before him. The demon and beast forces had teamed up to launch a full-scale attack on the Shadow Soldiers. Both sides went at it with everything they had. Even after being ripped apart repeatedly, the Shadow Soldiers kept regenerating, making them immortal warriors. Watching closely, he realized this was an internal conflict between monsters. Slowly but surely, the Shadow Soldiers claimed victory. The leader of the demon forces collapsed in front of the Shadow Monarch. With a cold voice, the monarch asked why the demons had betrayed him, but the demon just sneered in defiance. That was all it took to enrage the monarch. He grabbed the demon by the neck, lifted him off the ground, and gouged out one of his eyes. Then, he tossed the body to the ground and ripped off the mask it was wearing. As the face beneath was revealed, It turned out to be Baron, the monarch of white flames. Jinwoo couldn't understand why Baron was there. Suddenly, his consciousness shifted. He was now inside the Shadow Monarch's body. Then, a surge of powerful magic coursed through him, flowing from the black heart now embedded within him. Moments later, he sensed something approaching. Looking to the sky, he saw the rulers descending toward him. Then, a system notification echoed. Playback of the retrieved data has ended. Back at Kartinan Temple, the architect grinned as he observed Hunter Cha, muttering that humans were more interesting than he had expected. Hunter Cha steadied herself, preparing to unleash her sword dance skill, but the architect easily deflected her attack. A swift counterstrike landed on her body, slashing deep into her shoulder and forcing her to retreat to create distance. Meanwhile, Choi knew they had to wake Jinwoo fast. Using the last of his energy, he launched a fire attack, momentarily distracting the architect. Seizing the opportunity, Hunter Cha rushed toward Jinwoo. But before she could reach him, the architect blocked her path with a massive hand, ready to grab her. Reacting quickly, she dodged and repositioned herself. The architect smirked, praising Hunter Cha for her agility. But his grin slowly faded as he suddenly noticed the presence of a shadow soldier inside her body. In a cold tone, he questioned her connection to the monarch. After all, according to the rules of this place, shadows couldn't manifest here, unless the monarch himself had placed them. Clutching her wounded shoulder, Hunter Cha firmly stated that Jinwoo was their friend, and they had come to save him. The architect sneered, saying that wasn't the monarch's will. However, he granted Hunter Cha the chance to witness a glorious event, the descent of one of the great monarchs upon this world. But aside from himself, every human in this place had to die immediately. Suddenly, Jinwoo woke up. Without warning, he delivered a powerful punch straight to the architect's face. He stomped on the monster's body, pinning him to the ground with overwhelming force. The hunters watching felt a wave of relief. Jinwoo's presence reignited their hope of survival and escape. With an icy voice, Jinwoo demanded answers. What had this creature done to his body? But the architect only stared at him in confusion. The person standing before him wasn't supposed to be Jinwoo, it was supposed to be the Shadow Monarch. How was it possible for this human to retain his ego despite the black heart residing within him? Suddenly, a system notification popped up. Demon Hunter title. You have met all of the requirements. You have recalled defeating the Demon King Baron, the monarch of white flames. An incredible power has acknowledged the player as its master. Black Heart Effect. Plus 100,000 mana. From the architect's reaction, Jinwoo realized that the black heart inside him wasn't the creature's creation, nor was it meant to amplify his strength. Furthermore, he hadn't yet uncovered the full truth stored within the system's data. Jinwoo summoned multiple daggers from his dimensional portal, aiming them all at the architect as he demanded answers. What exactly was a player, and what had this creature tried to do to his body? The architect panicked as Jinwoo began his interrogation. But then he realized the truth. This was all because the Shadow Monarch had betrayed him by bestowing his power upon Jinwoo. Enraged, the architect warned that this betrayal would cause the other monarchs to hunt Jinwoo down without mercy. Consumed by fury, the architect reawakened the giant statues. The hunters watching grew alarmed, realizing how dire the situation had become. With a sinister laugh, the architect taunted Jinwoo, asking if he truly had the guts to kill him. He boasted about being the architect of the system, the entity that had guided Jinwoo's growth from the beginning. But Jinwoo simply smiled and calmly asked if killing the architect would revert him back to an E-rank hunter. The architect's rage exploded. He attempted to seize control of Jinwoo's system manually. But then, a series of notifications filled the air, firmly rejecting the administrator's access. The architect froze, his eyes widening in shock at what had just happened. Jinwoo, unfazed, explained that he had come to understand something. This system wasn't just a stroke of luck. It relied on him, and he had pushed it to its full potential. With that realization, he decided to surpass all expectations, consuming the system itself in its entirety. In his mind, the system's design was nothing more than a fragile failure. Seething with hatred, the architect let out a final scream, attempting to fight back with his last words. But Jinwoo didn't give him the chance. With relentless precision, he launched a flurry of dagger attacks, slicing the monster's body into pieces. Even in his final moments, the architect muttered in disbelief. Jinwoo was truly unpredictable. He pointed a trembling finger at Jinwoo, uttering a chilling prophecy. When the pillars of fire upheld the sky, an unavoidable death would come for him. Jinwoo met his gaze, unwavering. He wasn't afraid. Outside the gate, the hunters waited anxiously, worrying about the fate of the Hunter Guild, who had yet to show up. Before long, the hunters finally appeared, but they were battered and broken. The elite hunters had returned in a miserable state. As he stepped out of the gate, Jinwoo reflected on everything that had happened. The real architect might still be out there. He had found some answers, but not all of them. Jinchul reported to Jinwoo that 20 hunters had died inside the gate. He added that if a dungeon break had occurred, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Looking at the casualties, Jinwoo felt guilty. He realized this was a direct result of his decision to have the hunters report the double dungeon to the Hunter Association. However, he hadn't expected that both the Association and the Hunters Guild would enter the dungeon just to save him. On the other hand, Jinchul also blamed himself for asking the Hunters Guild to join him, which had led to so many deaths. Then, he asked Jinwoo how he had even known about the double dungeon's appearance. Jinwoo answered simply, the dungeon itself had called to him. Jinchul hesitated, unsure if Jinwoo was joking. But considering the number of casualties, he knew Jinwoo wouldn't joke about something like this. Hunter Cha approached Jinwoo to check on him. Jinwoo told her that he was fine. But suddenly, he collapsed to the ground. In Japan, thousands of tons of mana crystals were transported using special trucks and scattered around the gate as a source of magical energy. Yuri Orlov ensured everything was in place, confidently stating that 200 tons of mana crystals were sufficient to sustain the magic circle. Once the magic circle was activated, the mana crystals would generate a barrier, while Orlov himself absorbed the surrounding mana to keep the barrier stable. Suddenly, Orlov sensed a presence watching him. He turned toward the nearby buildings, demanding whoever was there to come out. An association officer mentioned that a dungeon break was expected to happen the next day, and that there shouldn't be any civilians left in the area. But Orlov declared that what he felt wasn't human. On top of a tall building, a mysterious figure stood proudly. The figure praised Orlov's sharp instincts, revealing himself as none other than Sung Il-hwan, Jinwoo's father. Staring at the massive gate ahead, Il-hwan muttered that everything was going exactly as he had foreseen, a tragedy meticulously planned. The security around the gate was extremely tight, with military forces deployed, even bringing in tanks to bolster the defenses. The Japanese hunters arrived at the scene. Tawada questioned the effectiveness of modern weapons against the monsters, to which Sugimoto explained that if Yuri Orlov failed, the military would act as the front line and human shields. Staring at the gate before them, Sugimoto remarked that the deployment of the entire military force and S-rank hunters reflected how powerless humanity was against such a colossal catastrophe. With the mana crystals spread throughout the city, Orlov felt satisfied, confident that he could close the S-rank gate by himself. Cracking open a bottle of liquor, he smirked foolishly, imagining his name being celebrated as the man who single-handedly handled an S-rank gate. Taking a swig of his drink, Orlov grew irritated when he learned only 15 S-rank hunters were present to witness his grand performance. An association officer explained that S-rank gates had also appeared in other countries, causing a global shortage of combat forces. Suddenly, the officer froze. The gate in front of them began to react, signaling the imminent start of the dungeon break. Meanwhile, at a hospital, Jinwoo woke up from his coma. Not long after, Jinho came to visit, breaking into tears upon seeing Jinwoo finally awake after being unconscious for 3 days. Jinwoo suspected exhaustion as the cause but couldn't shake the thoughts of the war the architect had shown him before. He then asked about the situation with the S-rank gate in Japan, and Jinho, looking somber, confirmed that it had begun. When the dungeon break in Japan occurred, hordes of giant monsters poured out of the gate, shocking both the hunters and the military forces. It didn't take long for them to realize they were facing creatures on par with an A-rank dungeon boss. Yuri Orlov, however, arrogantly dismissed the monsters emerging from the gate. He activated his barrier, causing the surrounding mana crystals to react and form a powerful shield that trapped the monsters within the gate's area. The giants tried to destroy it, but the barrier was too strong. Orlov grew more confident, mocking them for their futile attempts to break through. Suddenly, a colossal giant appeared. He towered over the others, so massive that Orlov himself seemed as small as his toe. Orlov's confidence began to crumble as his eyes widened in shock at the behemoth before him. The creature began to move, gripping an enormous sword in his hand. With a single swing, he effortlessly shattered Orlov's barrier. The scene shifts to Korea. Jinho's father is seen asleep at his office desk. When he wakes up, a sharp pain immediately shoots through his head. His assistant explains that he's been asleep for almost an entire day. Following his previous instructions, the assistant was prepared to take him to the hospital if he didn't wake up after 24 hours. He then hands over a report about a patient who managed to wake up from the eternal slumber. As Jinho's father reads through the report, the assistant explains that the patient is Jinwoo's mother. Deep in thought, he begins to wonder whether Jinwoo has the power to cure the illness. Back in Japan, the colossal monster giant's enormous hand grabbed Orlov and dropped him straight into its mouth, swallowing him alive. The military wasted no time springing into action. Tank cannons fired endlessly at the incoming giant monsters, while combat helicopters launched a counterattack from the skies. In the heat of the battlefield, Sugimoto declared that modern weapons wouldn't work against these monsters. He ordered his team to finish them off immediately. Tawada and Hoshino leaped into the air, ready to strike down the monsters' heads. However, the monsters retaliated swiftly with their swords. The swing of the massive blades sent them crashing to the ground. The battle was broadcast live throughout Japan and neighboring countries. Jinwoo watched the coverage at home, his thoughts racing. This situation felt eerily similar to the raid on Jeju Island. He feared that if this continued, all of Asia would be in danger. Suddenly, Jinna emerged from her room, her face still showing signs of trauma from the dungeon break incident at her school. With a pleading voice, she begged her brother not to leave. Jinwoo gently stroked Jinna's head, trying to calm her down. He assured her that he wouldn't go anywhere and encouraged her not to worry. In search of fresh air, Jinwoo went to the park. He talked to Beru about Jinna's condition. Beru explained that nothing unusual had happened, and she had been sleeping all day. However, Jinwoo could feel that Jinna's trauma lingered, leaving him uncertain about what to do. As he walked away from the park, a car suddenly pulled up beside him. Jinwoo was taken to the Eugene office, where he met Yu Myung-han, Jinho's father. Without any small talk, Myung-han handed Jinwoo a check, emphasizing that he didn't believe everything could be bought with money, especially when dealing with someone like Jinwoo. He hoped his sincerity would be understood. Jinwoo asked what Myung-han wanted. With a serious tone, Myung-han revealed that he was suffering from the same illness as Jinwoo's mother. Jinwoo was shocked and asked if Jinho was aware of this situation. Myung-han explained that only his wife and secretary knew about it. He also mentioned he was aware that Jinwoo's mother had recovered from the illness. With desperation, he asked Jinwoo for help to cure his illness. Jinwoo, however, replied that there was nothing he could do. Myung-han asked how his mother had been cured, and Jinwoo explained that if he knew how and could make money from that information, he wouldn't hide it. Jinwoo then said goodbye and left the Eugene office. In his mind, Jinwoo felt unsure. He couldn't tell if Myung-han was genuinely ill or had ulterior motives. He also realized that the holy water of life was scarce and needed to be used wisely. From the helicopter, a reporter delivered live updates about the tense situation engulfing Tokyo. 2 days had passed since the battle against the giant monsters began, leaving unimaginable destruction in its wake. The city had been reduced to rubble, with every corner devastated by the rampaging monsters obliterating everything in their path. In front of the gate stood the colossal giant monster. It remained motionless, like a grim statue guarding the entrance to hell, radiating an unrelenting threat. Since the dungeon break occurred, the hunters had only managed to take down 2 out of the 31 giant monsters that emerged. Hopes of ending this catastrophe seemed to fade more and more with every passing moment. The scene shifts to a Jin guild, where Jinho was shocked to hear Jinwoo's decision to head to Japan. Jinho warned him that the threat this time was far greater than the Jeju Island raid, especially because the monsters they had to face were abnormally huge. Jinwoo, however, reassured him that if this raid succeeded, a Jin guild would become known worldwide. Though hesitant at first, Jinho eventually agreed. Suddenly, he insisted on joining, revealing his bottled-up feelings since the events of the Red Gate, the Jeju Island raid, and the Double Dungeon. With tears in his eyes, Jinho confessed that his only pride was standing by Jinwoo's side. He pleaded with Jinwoo to let him come along. Surprised by Jinho's outburst of emotion, Jinwoo dodged the topic. While stepping out of his office, he casually remarked that his plan to go to Japan was just a joke. On his way home, Jinwoo felt conflicted. Those closest to him were worried for his safety. He was also aware that there were beings stronger than him. He knew he wasn't a hero. When he arrived home, Jinwoo was greeted by his mother, who immediately set dinner for him. While eating, Jinwoo's mind was preoccupied with concerns about Jinna and Jinho's father. He decided that it was the right time to make a choice. Deep down, he understood there were still individuals far stronger than him. Thus, he resolved to keep growing stronger and chose to return to the battlefield to improve himself. Jinwoo then told his mother that he might leave soon. His mother responded that even while eating, Jinwoo's father would drop everything to act when the Hunter Association called. Her words made Jinwoo feel supported in his decision. After dinner, Jinwoo went to Jinna's room. Sitting beside his sister, he admitted that despite often facing life-and-death situations, he always managed to come back alive. Hearing this, Jinna cried and asked if her brother was really leaving. Jinwoo reassured her that even if distance separated them, he would always protect her. The next day, the Korean Hunter Association held a grand press conference packed with reporters. As the head of the association, Mr. Go opened the session with a brief speech emphasizing the importance of this mission. Afterward, Jinwoo stepped up to the podium. With a strong, commanding voice, he announced that a Jin guild would be heading to Japan to address the dungeon break there. The press conference ended on a symbolic note. Mr. Go and Jinwoo shook hands firmly. The scene shifted to Japan's airport, where Jinho was seen carrying his enormous gear-filled bag. Meanwhile, Jinwoo walked with undeniable charisma. His leadership aura radiated with every step, catching the attention of onlookers. Without much ado, a Jin guild headed straight to the battlefield, ready to take on the challenges ahead. On the battlefield, the military hurried to evacuate civilians before the towering monsters hunting humans could arrive. However, an elderly man refused to leave, determined to save those still trapped in the rubble. Reluctantly, a soldier begged the old man to leave first, promising to stay behind and help evacuate the remaining people. During the evacuation, a giant monster suddenly appeared from behind a building. Soldiers unleashed a barrage of gunfire, but their attacks had no effect. Tension peaked as the monster reached out its massive hand, ready to grab someone. A soldier shielded a civilian with his body. Suddenly, a powerful strike sent the monster crashing to the ground with a deafening thud. The soldier was shocked to see Jima, one of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers, join the battle. Jinwoo approached and ordered the evacuation to proceed immediately. Meanwhile, another danger arose as the building ruins began collapsing. With quick reflexes, Jinho shielded civilians from falling debris with his barrier. He looked back at Jinwoo and said he'd help evacuate the people. With a menacing aura, Jinwoo locked his gaze on his enemy. He summoned his dagger from his inventory, ready for the fight. Jima struck the giant monster with his trident, sending it staggering. Spotting an opening, Jinwoo sprinted along Jima's body. When he reached the right spot, he leaped high into the air. With a single slash of his dagger, he delivered a killing blow that split the monster's head in two, ending the threat in an instant. News of Jinwoo's heroic actions in Japan spread to America, sparking varied reactions among hunters. They marveled at his incredible courage but questioned his decision to face the giant monsters alone, especially since Mrs. Sellner hadn't activated his first level. One hunter remarked that overconfidence often led to a quick death. The conversation turned into a betting pool about how long Jinwoo would survive, with extravagant prizes like yachts and homes at stake. Suddenly, Thomas Andre's deep voice cut through the chatter. With absolute confidence, he declared that he would wager Scavenger Guild's headquarters that Jinwoo could survive. He then reminded his crew to focus on the real threat ahead. Their own country was about to face a dungeon break. With a sly grin, he mused about their odds of survival. Thomas gazed out the window, contemplating that while playing in Japan might be fun, the challenges coming to America would make for an equally exciting day. The scene returned to Japan, where chaos intensified. From a helicopter, a reporter narrated the horrifying scene below. Jinwoo's summoned creatures, his ant shadow army, were savagely devouring a giant monster alive. Elsewhere on the battlefield, a young girl ran frantically, pursued by a giant monster, its massive hand poised to crush her. Suddenly, a dark shadow slowly enveloped the girl. In the blink of an eye, Igris appeared, slashing the monster's arm with lightning speed and saving the girl with an intimidating calmness. As the giant monster struggled to rise, Iron leaped from behind and delivered a crushing blow to the monster's head, toppling its massive body effortlessly. Proud of his achievement, Iron celebrated, while Igris looked on in disbelief, baffled by Iron's silly antics. From a distance, Jinwoo observed the battle calmly. Watching Iron's enthusiasm after his recent promotion brought a brief moment of amusement amidst the chaos. A soldier approached Jinwoo to thank him, though Jinwoo couldn't understand Japanese. With a thumbs-up gesture, he acknowledged the soldier's bravery. He then signaled for Jinho to escort the man to safety. Once the unnecessary hero squad finally left, Jinwoo moved closer to the corpses of the giant monsters. He prepared to bring them back to life as part of his shadow army. At the broadcasting center of the Japanese Hunter Association, the crew reported that Jinwoo had succeeded in reclaiming Nagoya from the monster's grip. Other cities, like Shizuoka, Takayama, and Nagano, had also fallen under his control. Matsumoto was stunned when he heard the news. He doubted Jinwoo's abilities when they met at the airport. Back then, Matsumoto had ordered Jinwoo to stand guard in Osaka while he went off to secure help from other countries. In his mind, it was impossible for Jinwoo to take on so many giant monsters all by himself. But Jinwoo, in a cold tone, flatly refused that order. The executives who heard him could only fall silent, caught up in the force of his intimidating aura. From that meeting, Matsumoto realized one thing. Jinwoo wasn't just any ordinary hunter. He had grand ambitions, to wipe out every single giant monster on his own. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Jinwoo was once again using his power to reanimate the corpses of giant monsters as his shadow soldiers. He named them number 1 through number 5. When Baru arrived and reported that he'd killed another monster, Jinwoo designated that new foe as number 6. All across Japan, Jinwoo's shadow troops pressed on in battle. Tusk unleashed a burst of fire that obliterated the head of one giant monster. Other hunters piled on magical attacks to bolster the fight. With his vast reserves of mana, Jinwoo could continuously regenerate his forces, leaving the giant monsters with absolutely no chance. Yet the threat was far from over. Countless unattended gates were beginning to show signs of dungeon break throughout Japan. Besides the giant monsters, new dangers emerged from other monsters that were slowly taking over the cities. A week after the dungeon break began, the devastation in Tokyo became all too real. The city was littered with collapsed buildings, testaments to the monster invasion. As Jinwoo and Jinho walked amid the ruins, they could feel the heavy impact of the tragedy. Jinho couldn't hide his shock as he commented on the overwhelming destruction of the city. While they were making their way around, Hanekawa arrived and joined them. Jinwoo immediately asked if there were any other hunters around. Hanekawa revealed that there weren't, only the 3 of them remained in Tokyo. He also explained that there were currently 16 S-rank hunters in Japan, hailing from countries including Japan, China, Canada, India, England, and Russia. According to the reports, 31 giant monsters had emerged from the gates, and one of those monsters had even crossed the sea toward China. Thanks to Jinwoo's arrival, most of the monsters had been taken down, while the remainder were being handled by his shadow army and the other hunters. Jinwoo thanked Hanekawa for the update, but he couldn't ignore one remaining challenge: a giant colossal monster standing motionless in front of a gate. Staring at the monster and surveying the ruined city, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel that this situation was eerily similar to what he'd experienced in Demon Castle before. He wondered if these events were clues from the system. Unfortunately, the system's architect had died, and Jinwoo had received no further guidance. He understood that the power he wielded could stop future disasters. Elsewhere, Tawada and Hoshino managed to defeat a giant monster with the help of some shadow soldiers. Even though they had secured a victory, Tawada felt frustrated. She couldn't believe that a monster they had struggled so hard to beat was so easily taken down by one of Jinwoo's summoned creatures. She felt like their job was nothing more than cleaning up after the real fight. Hoshino did his best to calm her down, reassuring her that they had done their part well. Meanwhile, Jinwoo observed the giant colossal monster standing in front of the gate. He felt this was the perfect time to act. Most of his shadow soldiers had already gathered around him. Behind him, 3 shadow generals, Tusk, Iron, and Igris, were on their knees, ready to follow their king's orders. Hanekawa was stunned by the sheer number and intimidating aura of Jinwoo's shadow troops. From above, Baru landed right in front of the king and knelt respectfully. With a satisfied smile, Jinwoo watched his army come together and complete their mission flawlessly. As their representative, Baru, the only soldier who could speak, expressed his gratitude for his king's praise. Then, Jinwoo ordered Jinho to keep his distance along with Hanekawa. Once both had retreated to a safe spot, Jinwoo moved toward the remaining corpse of a giant monster and uttered one word: "Arise." With that single command, he transformed the dead giant into a brand new shadow soldier. The entire shadow army stood tall in an eerie silence, their piercing gazes fixed on the giant colossal monster. With one swift hand gesture, Jinwoo commanded his forces, "Charge." In an instant, the shadow troops swarmed the giant colossal monster. As they closed in by sheer numbers, the monster suddenly opened his eyes and unleashed a massive sword sweep that wiped out hundreds of soldiers in a single blow. Jinwoo was momentarily stunned, realizing that the monster's power far exceeded his expectations. Tusk launched a burst of flame at the monster, while other shadow soldiers attacked from the side with axes. However, the monster quickly blocked Tusk's magic with his left hand and then sliced down the nearby shadow soldiers with his sword. On the ground, hundreds of ant-like shadow warriors surged at the monster's legs, only to be obliterated instantly by a single crushing stomp from his massive foot. Frustrated by how easily his smaller soldiers were being taken out, Baru prepared to advance and attack. But Jinwoo held him back, waiting for the right moment to uncover the giant monster's weakness. The shadow troops continued their relentless assault on the giant monster, yet he effortlessly felled them one by one. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was growing increasingly drained from the constant need to regenerate his forces. He soon realized that the monster's body was shielded by a powerful mana barrier, but he also noticed that the creature tended to guard his face against direct hits. Jinwoo quickly summoned Kaisel and rode out on him alongside Igris. Baru flew next to them and then darted toward the monster's face, but the beast dodged with impressive agility. From atop Kaisel, Igris swung his Demon King long sword and unleashed a lightning-infused slash aimed at the monster's head. Yet again, the attack was evaded. Observing the monster's reaction, Jinwoo deduced that his face must be his weakness. Igris leaped and sprinted along the monster's shoulder, then swung his lightning-charged sword at its face. But the monster immediately blocked the attack with his hand. Taking advantage of the distraction, Jinwoo activated his stealth skill to approach unnoticed. In one swift move, he struck the monster's face with his dagger, wounding him and drawing a cry of pain. Seizing the opportunity, Baru immediately attacked the monster's face with his claws. At the same time, Jinwoo activated his ruler's authority skill and summoned a barrage of daggers from a dimensional portal, launching attack after attack in rapid succession. The battle raged fiercely as Jinwoo and his shadow forces never let up. From a distance, Hanekawa watched the intense fight with an expression of sheer disbelief. It no longer looked like a hunter versus a monster. It felt like a duel between two monsters. Jinwoo broke out in a cold sweat, sharing the same feeling of awe and uncertainty. On the battlefield, the giant colossal monster was being relentlessly pressed by attacks that kept targeting his face. Using every dagger at his disposal, Jinwoo activated his mutilate skill and unleashed a flurry of slashes at one of the monster's eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, he ordered Baru to attack. Baru charged straight in, piercing through the shattered eye without hesitation. Meanwhile, Jinwoo and Igris continued their assault from outside, while Baru rained brutal blows on the monster from within its head. Eventually, the monster was rendered powerless, blood streaming from his mouth as he collapsed to the ground. System notifications flashed one after another. You have defeated the enemy. You have leveled up. However, Jinwoo sensed that something wasn't right. The system message simply noted the enemy's defeat, unlike the usual announcement of a dungeon boss victory. Moreover, the corpse of the giant monster couldn't be reanimated, leaving him to wonder if this raid was truly over. Lost in his thoughts, Jinwoo was soon approached by Jinho, who came over to congratulate him on his success. But Jinwoo quickly signaled for Jinho to keep his distance, aware that further danger might be imminent. Suddenly, the gate behind the monster reacted. A fierce storm of magical energy erupted, its power so overwhelming that it enveloped everything nearby. Jinwoo was astonished by that force, something he had never encountered before. He immediately took cover behind Baru, while Igris stepped in to shield Jinho from the raging magical energy. In the midst of the chaos, Jinwoo noticed that the corpse of another giant monster was slowly being absorbed by the gate behind him. The magical pressure was so intense that it even left a scar on his face. Recognizing that this was no ordinary situation, he called out to Jinho, urging him to stay outside and wait safely. Without any hesitation, Jinwoo leaped into the gate to find out what was happening. Inside, Jinwoo was stunned by the majestic sight before him. He found himself in a vast corridor with towering ceilings, surrounded by architecture reminiscent of a palace built by the giant monsters. As he ventured deeper, he heard Baru murmur about a creepy, mocking laughter echoing from the far end of the corridor. Sensing the same eerie vibe, Jinwoo deduced that the enemy had taken notice of his arrival, and was amused by it. The further he went, the clearer that mocking laugh became until he finally encountered a mysterious figure chained up. The figure greeted Jinwoo with a sly smile and addressed him as Monarch. He pleaded for his chains to be cut, confessing that he knew the ruler's plans and needed to warn the other monarchs immediately. However, upon seeing Jinwoo, the figure looked genuinely shocked and declared that Jinwoo was not the monarch he recognized. Jinwoo immediately questioned the stranger's condition and learned that he had been used as a tool by the rulers to prepare for a massive war. The figure then introduced himself as the monarch of the beginning, Ligia. He explained that the rulers were ancient enemies of the monarchs, and now they had their eyes on Jinwoo as well. Ligia offered his help to Jinwoo, provided that Jinwoo freed him from the chains that sealed his power. Doubtfully, Jinwoo asked why a monster like him could be trusted. In response, Ligia began chanting an incantation and activated his pledge of trust skill. A system notification appeared, stating that neither the initiator nor the acceptor of this skill could lie to each other until the contract ended. After a moment of contemplation, Jinwoo accepted the offer, triggering the skill's effect immediately. Ligia then stated that in exchange for his help, Jinwoo had to break the seal that restrained him. As Jinwoo agreed, his body suddenly reacted, a clear sign that he could no longer continue his deception. Realizing the gravity of the moment, Jinwoo then asked why Ligia was able to speak so freely, unlike other monsters. Ligia explained that those other monsters were inhabitants of the Chaos World, remnants of beings long subdued by the ruler forces to the point where their consciousness had eroded. As a monarch, Ligia had managed to maintain his rationality even after years of waiting for his freedom, until he finally met Jinwoo. Jinwoo pressed further, questioning why the rulers kept sending monsters to Earth to kill humans. With a cynical smile, Ligia explained that the ruler's goal was to turn Earth into a battlefield against the monarchs by seeding it with mana. While humans saw the monsters emerging from the gates as disasters, and mana as a blessing, they were unaware that the very essence of mana, including its crystals, was the root of the calamity. The monsters had been converted into vessels for mana by the rulers. Their purpose in implanting mana on Earth was to strengthen the planet as their battleground, and sooner or later, Earth would inevitably transform into a living hell. Jinwoo began to understand that this was more than just a battle. It was an eternal conflict between the monarchs and the rulers, with Earth serving as their endless playground for war. He then questioned why he had become a target for both sides. Ligia explained that Jinwoo's power wasn't originally his. It marked the betrayal of its true owner against the monarchs, automatically making him an enemy to both factions. Ligia promised to fight by his side and eliminate anyone who stood in their way, on the condition that Jinwoo break the seal binding him. With a serious expression and piercing eyes, Jinwoo considered Ligia's offer and suggested that it would be better if Ligia joined his shadow army, if he truly intended to help. Calmly, Ligia explained that the bodies of monarchs were nothing more than ephemeral spirits. Once a monarch dies, he can't be reanimated as one of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers. With a hopeful tone, he asked Jinwoo to cut the chains that restrained him. Unsheathing his dagger, Jinwoo murmured that he was beginning to grasp the situation, even though an uneasy feeling gnawed at him. Carefully approaching, he once again questioned Ligia to ensure that he would stand by his side. Ligia agreed. After all, that was the essence of a pact between monarchs. Jinwoo then cut one of the chains binding Ligia's arm. But before continuing, he asked once more, would Ligia also side with humanity? Ligia fell silent, a pause that made Jinwoo suspicious. He noticed a mana crystal embedded in Ligia's back. In a sharp tone, Jinwoo declared that the presence of that crystal suggested Ligia might be under the ruler's control, just like the other monsters whose orders were to kill humans. Feeling trapped, Ligia suddenly attacked Jinwoo. But Jinwoo easily dodged and swiftly stabbed Ligia with his dagger, stating that letting Ligia live would only bring further catastrophe. Enraged, Ligia flung his jaws wide, ready to devour Jinwoo alive. Yet, Jinwoo nimbly evaded the onslaught and delivered a critical slash that sent Ligia sprawling, utterly powerless. In his final moments, Ligia warned Jinwoo that the more monsters he fought, the closer the world would edge toward full-scale war, and he hoped that everything Jinwoo wished to protect would be consumed by the flames of battle. Jinwoo fixed a sharp gaze on him and declared that such a fate would never come to pass. In one swift, precise motion, he ended Ligia's life by decapitating him. A system notification then flashed on the screen. You have defeated the dungeon boss. You have defeated the monarch of the beginning, Ligia, one of the 9 monarchs. Your level has increased to 122. After the battle, Jinwoo felt a twinge of disappointment that he couldn't reanimate Ligia's corpse as a shadow soldier. Instead, he received Ligia's mana core as a prize. Slowly, Ligia's body faded away as Jinwoo walked out of the dungeon. In America, a helicopter landed in front of the residence of national-level hunter Christopher Reed. Stepping out of the helicopter were Mrs. Sellner and the vice president of the American Hunter Association, both bearing an important message. Christopher greeted them with a skeptical air, convinced they'd come to discuss the newly emerged rank S gate in America. He flatly declared that he wouldn't get involved. But Mrs. Sellner quickly explained that her visit wasn't about the rank S gate at all. It was to deliver something far more serious. She warned Christopher that he would be killed in the near future. That statement shocked and angered him. He brushed it off as an inappropriate joke and demanded to know exactly what she meant. Mrs. Sellner went on to explain that she'd had a nightmare about him, one in which a mysterious figure defeated him. Even though she tried to persuade him, Christopher remained unconvinced. In his eyes, no creature could beat him. Despite his rejection, Mrs. Sellner persisted in sharing this crucial information. She even offered a potential solution, revealing that there might be someone capable of protecting him. Hunter Sung Jinwoo, a Korean hunter who might possess enough power to counter this mysterious threat. The mention of Jinwoo's name only surprised Christopher further, leaving him to question the abilities of this Korean hunter. After defeating Ligia, Jinwoo emerged from the gate with a mix of relief and caution. He believed that killing the monarch had been the right call. Even in chains, Ligia still emanated an overwhelming aura of magical energy. He also realized that he must become even stronger to face even greater threats in the future. The end of the battle with the rank S gate in Japan exploded into major news across the globe. Every giant monster had been eradicated, and Sung Jinwoo's name went viral on social media. Many hailed him as the next contender for national-level hunter, showering praise for his extraordinary might. On the other hand, Lu Jigang, a national-level hunter from China, managed to crush a giant monster that had crossed the ocean toward his country. In Japan, Matsumoto, the head of the Hunter Association, finally surrendered and admitted his mistakes. Meanwhile, in America, hunters celebrated their success in closing down the rank S-gate that had sprung up there. During a celebration party, Thomas Andre approached a group of hunters who had previously bet on Sung Jinwoo's defeat. With a relaxed yet authoritative tone, he collected their wagers. His assistant then briefed him on the list of guilds set to participate in an upcoming international conference. Among those names was a Jin guild, owned by none other than Sung Jinwoo from Korea. Thomas couldn't help but smile broadly at the prospect of meeting Jinwoo face to face. After wiping out all the giant monsters in Japan, Jinwoo absorbed their power by adding them to his shadow army. Even though one giant monster managed to escape to China, Jinwoo felt that he had significantly strengthened his forces. Not long after, Hanekawa approached Jinho, informing him that there was an urgent call. Upon answering, Jinho received shocking news from his family. Jinwoo quickly asked Jinho what was going on, and Jinho revealed that he had to return to Korea immediately due to a family crisis. Without hesitating, Jinho headed straight back to his homeland. Once in Korea, Jinho was picked up by his father's assistant and rushed to the hospital. There, he learned that his father was suffering from eternal slumber, a condition that forces one into an endless sleep. Jinho was utterly shocked and sank into deep sorrow. His father's assistant then handed him a book filled with articles about Jinho and his family. The pieces showed that his father had always tracked his children's progress, even keeping up with Jinho's latest endeavors. Overwhelmed with emotion, Jinho wept as he realized that his father's high expectations were nothing but a reflection of his deep love. As Jinho and his assistant left his father's room, Jinho felt something stir inside him, but he dismissed it. In reality, what he sensed was Jinwoo stealthily entering his father's room using his shadow exchange and camouflage skills. With genuine care, Jinwoo retrieved the holy water of life and used it to heal Jinho's father. Outside the hospital, Jinwoo smiled with relief, happy to have been able to help Jinho's family in their time of need. With heartfelt warmth, he said, "It might be earlier than expected, but happy birthday, Jinho."